Seal One is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for a 25% off discount.
All right, lead heads. Welcome back to another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. I'm your host, Lefty. We have been bringing you all the lead education for the past 13 years, since 2012.
Wow.
And if you haven't had an opportunity, make sure you go check our last couple of episodes because they've been really good episodes. We continued our series on mastering survival with comms, caches, and community. It was a really good episode, and we've got one of our guests from that episode joining us back on this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Seaver is back with us.
Hey, Marty. How's it going, man?
It's going good.
Good. That was a good podcast. That was fun.
It was, and I learned a lot from that, especially on the comm side. We could have just done the whole episode on comms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a deep dive that can go on forever and ever.
Yeah. And the caches, I would like to get more into the caches, but each one of those we could deep dive. But we're kind of grazing the surface on most of these topics just to get you guys interested and involved. And then as we continue the series, we're going to focus in more on specifics on each of those. So Stay tuned, more to come. And I think this episode is actually going to help dive into the community building. Give some people some tips and skills maybe on how they can do that, even though it's not really what we're going to be talking about today. This episode is going to be on espionage, corporate, industrial, espionage, intelligence gathering. It's going to be good. I'm really looking forward to this episode. And this was a suggestion by Bryan that we do an episode on this. So this is going to be fun. I'm kind of just sitting back for the ride on this one, guys.
Yeah.
I don't really know where it's going to go, but I think it's going to be fun and it's going to be a good time. And Bryan has brought a couple of his
two of my best old homies.
Two homies. There you go. I was going to say partners in crime because
man.
I think people are going to get some intel that you will not find anywhere in the world but right now on this podcast.
Yeah, Brad and Mitch were both my partners back in the late 90s and early 2000s, right after 9/11 in the corporate espionage, industrial espionage business. And so I'm real happy to have them here today and us get to reminisce about our time in that field.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because you guys were like there during the height of the corporate espionage days. And you've got some stories about a couple of guys that you guys worked with that you're not going to get anywhere else but on this podcast. So I'm very interested to hear about your days during the corporate espionage days here. But before we get into that,
we like to call that competitive business intelligence because we weren't actually engaged in the corporate espionage. So I think that needs to be put out there to set the stage that we didn't do anything illegal.
I'm going to let you guys throw out all the disclaimers that you need. I'm not going to say or accuse of anything. But Bryan, do me the honor and introduce your guests for us because you know more about them than I do, and I'm not going to do them justice reading the bios you sent me. So
so both of these guys, former Marines. Brad Duley, former Marine, embassy guard, MSG, Marine security guard. Worked in Nairobi, Kenya. Worked in you were in Okinawa, is that right? Also.
Prior to, I was in Kingston, Jamaica at the embassy in Kingston, Jamaica, and then right after the bombing in Nairobi, Kenya in '98.
Yep. Brad and I became close partners in crime, partners in friends, and colleagues working for a company called Phoenix Consulting Group. And I think we met in around 1998, 99, around there.
2000.
Me and you were 2000. Okay. So it was a little bit later. Phoenix Consulting Group was a corporate intelligence company that was started out of Huntsville, Alabama, that was run by former military intelligence veterans, most specifically veterans from the Phoenix program in Vietnam. And I was recruited into that company primarily from my service in the Alabama National Guard. I was scooped up by that company and hired on, and then over the years working for them, I ran into numerous colleagues and professionals in the field and learned a lot. And Brad was one of my early partners working in that field. We were both young, the same age. We were both similar skill sets and similar interests. And we were young and dumb, and we would do just about anything the bosses asked us to do for the most part. So. And that's Brad. Brad has served as a law enforcement officer. He was a team leader in Iraq for multiple PSD teams. He's worked in the on the WPPS contract for State Department and multiple contracts for other contract companies with DoD and others. So very, very capable and informed individual in this
and a
field.
Marine.
And a Marine. We're just covered up with Marines over here.
That's okay.
That seems all I have on the show are Marines.
I know it's crazy. It's like that's all that works for our company at SAPS. Everybody's a Marine over here now.
Marine heavy.
Yeah.
Welcome into the show, Brad. Thank you for joining
you.
us. And looking forward to hearing some stories. You're also a long range competitor, or not competitor, but long range shooter. You're kind of a hobbyist in that, and
Yes, sir. Kind of sewer. ELR and extreme long range and long range. Kind of sewer.
What's extreme long range? Is that over a mile? Is that extreme long range? Or
well, okay. So long range is a pretty relative term. If you have a muzzle loader, a couple 100 yards might be long range. If you're shooting a Hawken rifle or something. And really long range, I would say, is relative to what your skill sets are. So, but in the competitive world, long range is up to 1,000 yards, and then the extreme long range is 1,000 and beyond.
Very good. Now we've had a guest on the show, and he's a friend of mine too, Charlie Melton, and Charlie has attempted, I think, several world record long shots with different calibers and whatnot. And I went out with him in Utah not too long ago. It's been about 3 or 4 years ago. And he was attempting a 5-mile shot.
That's a poke.
Yeah. I mean, he was getting it out there. We just couldn't dial it in to hit the target.
I do know that they don't hit it on first round. It's I think the world record right now, it took him 179 shots to hit 4 miles. That's the last record I heard of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not something you do on the first shot. Definitely, they get to walk it in, so to speak. But yeah, so I've had some experience with some of the extreme long range shooting. Now you were showing a rig that you had built earlier. Do you still have that handy?
Oh, yes, I do. Because
we are a gun podcast, also. I know our listeners would love to see this and have you break it down for them. And Mitch, we're going to get to you. We hadn't forgot about Mitch.
Okay, so this is the American Rifle Company nucleus action, and it's on the American Rifle Company xylo, which means wood in Greek, stock. And what really brought me to this particular company is I was on the forums looking at what would be something that I could get into. It's not cheap, but not ridiculous expensive.
Yeah.
So I saw this stock. I saw how this is going on, kind of like the what was it, like steampunk kind of Rocket Man look. So I was digging it, and I like the flat grip here, and it's got a bubble level right in the.
Oh, nice. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and then what really separates this chassis from everything else is that this is a clamp that clamps the recoil lug of the action into a clamp.
Oh, wow.
And I really think that is what makes this thing a eighth to a quarter minute shooting gun. So you don't have to bed the chassis, because this thing's got it clamped in internally right here.
And what caliber is that?
708 Ackley improved, or 708 AI. Now Ackley actually didn't do this one, so they call it 40 millimeter improved, but everybody commonly calls it the AI.
Yeah.
So yeah. And
which barrel do you have? Whose barrel are you using?
That's a Benchmark. They're out of Washington State.
Okay.
They have.
Let me see that muzzle device. I mean, we got to go through every.
Okay, that's a Area 419 Hellfire match 4-port. I like those self-indexing muzzle brakes. If you ever have to use like shims and time it up,
yeah,
that's a pain. So I like these Area 419 just because you don't have to do that, and you can self-time them, and they really reduce the recoil like significant.
Nice. And you had some glass on there too. Did you want to talk about that glass?
Yeah, this is a new one for me. I typically like to run, either the Burris XTR3s or the Bushnell Elite Tacticals, Night Forces, and I've shot a lot of different scopes. And I saw this pop up, and this is like an Arkin competitor. Never got into the Arkins, but then when this particular DNT scope showed up, it's a 7-35. I just wanted to give it a go. It was $600. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah. Did it come with the rings, or did you have to buy those separate?
Those are the American Rifle Company Embrace rings.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a scope, itself. But I just went out to 1,000 with this for the first time, and I went out in heavy mirage, very heavy, like shooting underneath into a pool, and I got some impressive groups with this scope. I'm really happy with it. I don't really get into China scopes, but there was so much buzz about this that I gave it a shot.
Okay.
So far,
they're going to go up in price with these tariffs, so
yeah,
get them while you can.
But then here's my question: once China comes to reason and they drop the tariffs, then are the prices going to drop?
No, because then they're used to getting that price, and they know they can get it now. Or if people don't buy it, I mean, that's what you got to do, is you got to not buy the shit. Just don't buy it.
Recently, I also bought some Athlon scopes, and they're a China scope too.
Athlon is, I think they're out of Tennessee, aren't they, Brian? Athlon?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're just down the road, actually.
But I think they may be. I think their stuff is probably being manufactured in China.
I mean, I don't know which ones aren't China, Japanese, whatever. I mean, they're all coming from somewhere else, and they're just assembled. They're assembled in America. So, but yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was impressed with the Athlon scopes too. I bought 2 of those. I bought these 3 China scopes within like the last 3 weeks. Just went on a kind of China scope escapade there to T&E them to see what it's all about. And there's some times you're like, okay, that's a $500 scope feel. Then there's times you're like, oh boy, that image quality is a $3,500 scope.
Yeah.
In daylight, in daylight. Now low light is different story. But I was really impressed with the Athlons. But then yesterday I looked to get some more of these Athlons, and the 629 scope is now $840.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I missed it. I missed a damn tariffs deal. But you know what that did? I can jump into an American scope, loopholed, Burris for around the same price. And
well, and that's the whole point is they're cutting their own throats, because that's why people were buying them. If they're just going to raise their prices, then that's just going to push people. Is like, well, if I'm going to pay that price, I might as well get a loophole.
And that was a direct example of that thinking. Like, well, hell, I ain't going to buy these things if I can hop into the American stuff.
Yeah. There you go. Well, very good, Bryan. Let's get Mitch.
So Mitch Davis, also U.S. Marine. Mitch has worked with me for many years, probably over 20 years, in the private investigation and security field. Mitch and I also served as deputy sheriffs together, and we've done a lot of wild shit together, to say the least. Mitch is a career wireman of the old school kind of philosophy and technology, for that matter. Mitch is, and a wireman is basically the kind of guy that put a bug in your phone back in the day. For the police or for one of the intelligence agencies, etc. So Mitch has gone to every school for that kind of thing. Maintains his skill sets in technology. Mitch is a private pilot as well, and has had a long career in the tech field of private intelligence, private investigation. His company TSCM USA is out of Nashville. Technical surveillance countermeasures. So any of your bug sweeps or attempts to find tracking devices on your vehicle or in your personal belongings, that's what Mitch specializes in.
Very cool. Mitch, welcome in. Glad to have you. So you live in Nashville?
I do live in Nashville. I recently moved about an hour outside of Nashville, so I'm down here in Coffee County.
Oh, okay. I'm in the borough, so we're practically neighbors.
There you go.
You're down there with Black Rifle Coffee. Isn't that funny that Black Rifle Coffee opened up one of their manufacturers down there in Coffee County?
That's
right.
No,
they're up in actually in Manchester. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Good bunch of guys over there.
Did he have something to do? Didn't he drive the Max Best drive the black coffee?
Matt Best is
Matt Best
the guys.
Part of
it's actually Hefner, I think, is the main guy behind it. But Jeff Kirkham, who we've had on this podcast several times, also was one of the original, I think, originators of that company also.
Yeah. Mitch also worked with Brad and I both at Phoenix, and worked in the corporate intelligence gathering world, worked in the intelligence field, and then worked in the intelligence community for the U.S. government. After 9/11, all of us kind of segued into the intelligence training and operational contracting world as 9/11 kind of progressed, or after as the global war on terror kind of progressed. We found ourselves still working for Phoenix, but more focused on the military intelligence side of the house rather than the corporate and industrial side of the house.
Yeah, very good. Well, this is going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to this. And we're going to, some of these things that Bryan has talked about and dropped, like the Phoenix program back in Vietnam. We're going to go in a little bit more detail, tell you about what that is. And I think you've got a specific guy in mind that was part of that, and that you guys worked with, that we're going to talk about. That's going to be good too. But just to kind of, high level here, corporate espionage. It's the covert, sometimes illegal theft of a company's confidential info. Think trade secrets, tech specs, client data. When we go to these trade shows for the firearms industry, you see a lot of these Asian guys running around taking pictures of stuff. They're snagging some information to try to get a competitive edge. And that's the whole thing about the industrial or corporate espionage side of it, is you try to get a competitive edge.
Yeah, and it can be the very minutia, that really gives you that little inkling of data that gives you the key to what you're trying to unlock, as far as trying to figure out, what your competitor's widget is that they're coming out with next, or what the new algorithm or the new program or the new socket,
Yeah.
all of those
Just
things.
That small little piece of intel that might give you the advantage over your competitor. And
That's right.
The tactics.
It could be something as small as, looking at one person's insurance policy, looking at their trash and seeing that, their insurance policy covers this, and that. Well, then you can start extrapolating what everybody in the company is doing, and you can start building budgets, that kind of thing. So, it can be very, very complicated, but a broad spectrum of things that you look into when you're looking at corporate intelligence.
Yeah, and the tactics can run the gamut, like you were talking about. You can go through your competitor's trash, cyber breaches to swipe codes.
Yeah,
the elicitation was big. Elicitation.
Yep, elicitation. One of the things you got to remember is the individuals that are conducting this kind of work are in business, and they're not in business to do crime. They're in business to use ethical and legal methodologies to collect information on competitors for their clients, and and to also keep their clients' information safe and secure. And so, you've got to find methodologies and ways to elicit that information or collect or gather that information. And sometimes it steps up to the borderline of being a loophole or a gray area, and sometimes it's very deliberate and very open about what you're doing. So much so that back in the old days, we could make phone calls to competitors and literally tell them exactly what we were doing and who we were, that we are researching their company, we're interested in a new widget that they're working on, and we're collecting data on that widget. And they would literally just offer up the information. That's an ethical way of collecting information. You can get a research and development guy to tell you anything if you insult his ego. So that's some of the things you got to do, but you got to use legal and ethical methodologies.
Now, is honeypotting, is that legal? Is that ethical?
No, if it's what I think you're saying, probably not.
Yeah. There's been several cases of that.
Well, what you don't want to do is get into the concepts of blackmail and that kind of thing. Extortion, blackmail. These can be these are felonious crimes, and they're very easily provable. And it's not like you see in the movies where everybody's getting an envelope full of pictures of themselves doing untoward things with whoever. It usually doesn't have to be that kind of thing to get the information you need. A lot of it is right out there in the open, and a lot of people literally leave it in the dumpster.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll add on to what Bryan said is that the Phoenix Consulting Group wasn't a corporate espionage company that was just trying to get away with things illegal. In fact, it was opposite of that. Their clients were people who we trained, and we did red team analysis to keep them from making mistakes that their adversaries or that actual illegal agents, espionage agents, would try to get at them. So, but there was a separation there between the competitive business intelligence and then offensive ops, I would say, Bryan, right? When we actually went offensive.
Yeah.
But even when we
there's defensive and offensive intelligence operations, especially in the corporate or industrial world. An offensive op would be where you're going after a client's competitor's information and trying to gather that. It could be something as simple as a internet search, but that's an offensive operation where you're going after them. Whereas a defensive operation is where you're looking at the client's data, the client's facilities, the client's personnel and seeing where and how you can compromise them so that you can fix those compromises.
Red team. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it. A lot of the time we would find ourselves one week on a red team where we're working for a client trying to break into their facilities. And those got really, really fun because
yes.
you could break the law. You could
do anything. You got to get out jail free card, right? Remember those cards? And be like, hey, in case we got caught. Now you don't want to get caught, but just in case, it's like, hey.
We would carry a form letter from the heads of the company saying these guys are legit. Ignore them, let them go. And we would do everything from picking locks, breaking into facilities, jumping fences, climbing gates. We would do any and everything to get into these places. But we were working for that client. We were working for that facility. So on the offensive side, sometimes it could be very mundane, and a lot of times it boiled down to, sitting at the Applebee's or the local steakhouse right after or right during happy hour and watch everybody from the R&D facility down the road pour out and start drinking their night away.
Business at lunch.
Yep, lunches, and you could just sit there and listen or sit there and ask questions. You just sit down and talk to a person and tell them, hey, especially a country boy like me, that I think I was recruited at Phoenix as a young country accent having young soldier, and they looked at me as somebody they could put in front of a target, and that target would just assume that I was some hillbilly dolt.
You were not assuming.
I was just a hillbilly dolt, and they heard it. All they hear is banjo music when I would talk, and so that. But I could sit there and ask somebody, well, that widget that you're working on, does it turn left or does it turn right? Or it must go straight ahead. Well, no, you dummy. It actually goes backward. So that was the kind of things that you could elicit from somebody just from sitting at the bar and talking to them.
Now, a distinction between, I want to point out, but with the defensive offensive, is that even when we were on our offensive operations, we stayed to the law, and there was a lot of gray area, and at no time was Phoenix. They didn't want to dabble into that gray because they didn't want. Well, they got one, but they didn't want the lawsuits and all that. So I felt better doing offensive operations, knowing that I was still being legal about it. We couldn't do, if you get me into a defensive operation, I'm just being an absolute, international spy terror. I'm doing everything a terrorist would do, anything that a foreign operative would do to gather intel. And it was just like, just free reign if we're doing competitive business intelligence.
Let's give a little background because you guys have dropped, some things that I want to, for our listeners that are new to this and may not be familiar, earlier, Bryan, you talked about in Vietnam, the Phoenix program.
Yeah.
Can you go into a little more detail and talk about what that was? And then that'll lead up because the Phoenix group kind of took its name from that. Yep.
Correct. So the Phoenix group in Vietnam, or the Phoenix project rather, was a DOD and CIA joint project to basically collect information on political targets in South Vietnam. That's the patch, the Phung Hoang patch. Their symbol was a Vietnamese phoenix, and they were very notable for conducting direct action missions, hostile interrogations, all types of human intelligence collection, most specifically on political targets in South Vietnam. Excuse me. They gained a very ferocious reputation as a very aggressive intelligence collection unit, and they there was much controversy surrounding them over the years, and much has come out about the program in the last 20 years. Phoenix was very notable for conducting operations against other friendly forces, specifically the Australians, and that were involved in Vietnam. So there was a lot of counterintelligence efforts going on with Phoenix as well. So one of the stories that inspired Apocalypse Now with Colonel Kurtz was based on a Phoenix operation against a Australian SAS colonel that wasn't playing ball, wasn't collaborating correctly with those forces, and that's one of the big inspirations behind Apocalypse Now. So that's the Phoenix group from Vietnam. So fast forward into the mid '90s, and some of the guys that have retired from the U.S. Army and from some of the three-letter agencies get together, and this is just post Cold War. So the Berlin Wall has fallen, the Soviet Union has collapsed, and there is a open market for intelligence expertise in the corporate industry, in the business world. And with that, some guys started Phoenix Consulting Group, specifically John Nolan Sr. and Jim Fountain were two of the primaries, and they were who we all worked for. And these were veterans of the Phoenix program in Vietnam, and they named their company in homage to the Phoenix program and called it Phoenix Consulting Group. And they provided professional intelligence services to all types of customers, from private industry to government sector, law enforcement, foreign clients for that matter. So a lot of foreign government work, and everything from interrogation support, interrogation training, corporate intelligence collection, so competitive intelligence collection, red team security work was a major part of Phoenix's offerings. And Brad and Mitch and I, we worked as the low guys on the totem pole. We
field
were
agents, basically, right?
Yeah, we were basically field agents that did everything from dumpster diving to installing cameras, or conniving ourselves around a camera. we did all the things for Phoenix out in the field.
You said interrogation. It's not the type of interrogation that probably our listeners are thinking about. Talk about like some of the interrogation methods that you guys had.
Yeah. So
used.
One of the things that Phoenix did, Phoenix designed a lot of the training modules for the U.S. military, the U.S. Army Intelligence School. And so we actually did a lot of production of training videos and training courses, training curriculum. As a matter of fact, Mitch and I did a whole training video that, if I'm not mistaken, is still used at the Human Intelligence Collectors course. That was a Phoenix product, and it was basically 23 psychological approaches that are used to elicit information from an interviewee or from an interrogatee. Most of these are designed around what was at that time the Department of Defense's priorities, and we filmed a training video that outlined all 23 of those scenarios in different forms. So we did law enforcement scenarios, we did POW scenarios, we did out in the field with machine gun fire over your head kind of scenarios where you're interviewing a captured prisoner or a captured soldier. So there was a broad spectrum of stuff, and Brad and I and we actually attended the U.S. government, actually the DIA's, the Defense Intelligence Agency's interrogator and strat debriefer program, just to make us better for that as Phoenix serviced those clients.
So I think it might be important to lay some foundation, because I know we're bounced around between different conversation of what Phoenix does, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but really Phoenix was a competitive business intelligence company until 9/11.
Yeah.
And then it got serious. And
Yeah.
because of their background, and it was natural for a company like that with the people that they have to alter focus and then start basically fighting the GWAT and preparing people to go and fight the GWAT.
That's right.
Global war and terror. But yeah, it was all corporate and all pretty much, home based. We'd fly around the country, work for American corporations, help them protect themselves. And then when 9/11 hit, Phoenix went to a whole nother it was a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So it really did.
If people were listening and they're like, damn, Phoenix is like, first they're talking about like, competitive business intelligence, and now we're talking about other government organizations and doing this stuff. I'm just trying to maybe give them a frame of reference, kind of narrow it down to what Phoenix did, because Phoenix was, a pretty dynamic company.
And we worked for them for over a decade. We experienced that whole paradigm shift, and we had a home for contracting before contracting was even a thing. Brad and Mitch and I were actually government contractors working for Phoenix with security clearances long before anybody had ever heard of Blackwater or Triple Canopy or anything like that. We contracting certainly existed, but it was the GWAT hadn't happened yet, and we didn't have that big private contractor boom that we had in the early 2000s and up.
And I'll say a very distinct memory that I have, Brian, is me and you on top of a building doing our things for the competitive business intelligence and aerospace industry, a big name in aerospace, like big. Yeah. And you and I had a conversation, and it wasn't the only conversation I've had about this, but you and I distinctly were saying something's going to happen. Al-Qaeda is going to do something, whether it be a NFL, bomb the NFL Super Bowl or something, we had the USS Cole get attacked. We had the barracks attacked. We had, and then
New York,
the twin embassy bombings.
Yeah.
And then Brian and I are on top of this aerospace defense contractor, big name, like you're probably flying around in their planes and stuff every day. But anyway, we said, why haven't they done something yet? And it wasn't a month later. Brian calls me up. Hey, man, have you heard? I'm like, what? He's like, you better wake up and smell the coffee. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't know. You remember that, Brian?
Yeah.
I had no idea it happened yet.
Yep.
He goes, man, turn on the TV. We're under attack. Terrorists just flew planes into the trade towers. I turn on the TV and sure as shit. Yeah. And he and I had that conversation, but a month prior.
Yeah. We had just spent a month prior breaking into that facility that aerospace, that aerospace company. They were a client of Phoenix's, and we had been tasked to target it for Red Team. And
we want to talk about Red Team. I want to talk about red teaming and get into that. So hold right there, because I want to get to Mitch, because we haven't got to Mitch yet.
Yeah, Mitch is being quiet over here.
Acro bags embrace the art of blending in with a low-vis, everyday carry bag featuring a dedicated, discreet firearm storage system. Designed to meet the needs of modern commuters and travelers seeking both functionality and security, the Acro 10-liter sling bag offers an array of organizational options in a comfortable platform. Whether you're a daily commuter, law enforcement professional, or a weekend warrior, this sling bag caters to your lifestyle with utmost precision. The dedicated, discreet concealed firearm compartment is ambidextrous with quick access. An MFT multi-mount platform is included, offering the ability to mount a holstered firearm or other 1.5-inch belt clip accessories, with custom orientation, utilizing a hook and loop system. Cooling, quilted back padding increases comfort for extended use. The Acro series is constructed from durable materials that are designed to withstand the elements and rugged environments.
Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
So Mitch, prior to your involvement with the Phoenix group, what were you doing?
Prior to working for Phoenix, I had actually worked on the road. Worked on the road in the entertainment industry, just traveling all over the United States. I had my own business. I was putting myself through different schools to learn about electronics. I had a huge passion for electronics. And I had some friends that were working for different government groups and sectors that were giving me names of schools and places to go to learn different things. Back then we had the internet, but you didn't have websites all over the place. You didn't have Google telling you where to go. So I was busy making money and using that money to put myself through school. And
electronic school?
Through different electronic schools. I learned basic electronics, advanced electronics. I learned all about cameras. I learned technical surveillance countermeasures at different levels. Attended a few schools that were only approved for government and law enforcement. I had schools I attended out in Oklahoma, Jarvis International, and several others. So I attended all these, went through their classes, and I was officially off the road. I was getting a little burned out on traveling 300 days a year. And I was off the road. And
were you in the film and TV industry? Is that the entertainment industry you were in, or what?
No, I was in the music industry. I was touring. I was touring back through the mid 80s into the late 90s.
Mitch was a bus driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I worked in trucks and buses on tours. I started in around 1985 with Genesis. We were doing the Invisible Touch tour, which was the biggest stadium tour since Michael Jackson did the Victory tour in '84. And
Genesis was huge.
Genesis was huge, and it spun off to Mike and the Mechanics and a bunch of other groups that were working, and the business was pretty big. Everybody liked going to stadiums, and worked my way through with everybody from Pink Floyd, Bad Company, Bon Jovi.
Man, I bet you got some stories being a bus driver, don't you?
Yeah, lots of places, lots of stories, lots of fun, lots of craziness and madness.
That'd be another episode.
What happens on the bus?
I could have been with 50 different fraternities in college and never had as much fun as I had on the road being with 50 fraternities. So it was good, but I progressed out of that. Like I said, my dad used to harp on me all the time. But what are you going to do? You going to keep on doing this music stuff, or where are you going to go? What are you going to do when you get older? And it finally started to kick in, and I finally got off the road, and I worked some local jobs and started a private investigation company, got my PI license, started putting together. I started getting video of things that nobody else could get. Audio is always a big no-no because all the laws are written about audio and what you do after you obtain audio. So I had to learn legal ramifications of video, different technologies. And I was one of the first people that could, put video equipment, bury it in the ground, watch a house for 2 or 3 weeks and never have to drive by once. So I parlayed that into my investigation work and got very busy with it. And at the same time, I'd met Bryan, and we started talking about collaborating on different projects using video and technology, electronic countermeasures. And eventually Bryan got me into Phoenix, or talked to me about Phoenix. And I got into Phoenix and filled out back then it was all paper, right? They're like 3,000 page background check, and submitted that. And after that point, I was in, and I became part of Phoenix, and started working different projects with the guys on an as needed basis.
I should get Howard and Mitch on an episode and talk about Tales from the Road, right?
Indeed.
Howard was on our last episode in the comms and in the community.
We should do a Tales from the Tour Bus episode.
Yeah, boy.
The story that never ends. Something I wanted to put on the table too while we're discussing Phoenix, and everybody should understand that there's a huge difference between collecting, harvesting, and gathering, and espionage in general. Espionage is intentionally causing destruction or disruption to a process or system. It doesn't matter whether it's for profit or power. But, a big difference in a lot of what we were doing was collection. I mean, it was intelligent collection where you're, like Bryan said, you're gathering bits and pieces, you're gathering video, you're chatting with people. So everything that we've done, is completely, I guess you could call it above board and legal. Because if somebody gives you something, you ask a question, they give you an answer, and you feel that the answer is reliable and pretty accurate, well, that's not espionage. It's what people do with their information after they receive it. And it's just like an investigation. You could sit there and collect 1,000,001 things. Some that could be illegal. Somebody could talk about illegal activities. They could have evidence of illegal activities. It's what you do after you collect that information. It's like audio recording. Every law in the books about audio recording it's illegal for the most part. It's not the actual recording unless you get into certain parts of telephone conversations, and it varies from state to state. But to get the system to do something about a recording requires somebody to distribute that recording, and then it's what they did with the recording afterwards. And back like we've all been discussing, if I collect information on XYZ Corporation, I know what they did in the past. Today, I know what they're doing for the next 5 years, and my information is accurate. And I give it to somebody, and I may, who knows what their intentions are. My bosses may know, I may not know. They may have different reasons, but if I'm collecting and it's legal, that's fine. I just collect it. But after that certain point, if somebody wants to use it in a tortious manner for harmful purposes, that's when it gets a little bit icky and sticky, and that can go in different directions. We're not lawyers, but generally speaking, within the limits of the law, we stayed within the limits of the law as we were all doing our work out in the field.
Yeah.
It's just basically an investigation at the end of the day.
Open source information is not illegal.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I had that graph up. Maybe this is a good time to talk about the cycle.
The intelligence cycle.
Yeah.
So the intelligence cycle is basically the way information is digested through an organization, whether that's a corporate business organization or a military organization or an intelligence community level organization. It starts with direction or targeting. So you have to know exactly what you're looking for before you go out and look for it. So it starts with that direction. Then the cycle circles over to collection. Collection methodology can be everything from electronic measures to collect that information, or it could be something as simple as an open source intelligence search on Google, using Google to gather what the information is that's out there in the world on the internet. It could also be human intelligence collection, where you're sitting down talking to somebody or eliciting information from somebody, talking over a cup of coffee, or overhearing their conversation while they're at the bar. These are
human. On a plane with them, sitting next to them on a plane.
Yep, flying next to somebody on the plane while they do their daily work and take calls. These are methods of collection. So, and then that collection effort is gonna birth data. It's gonna have information, and that information is no good unless you know what to do with it. And that's where the processing part of the formula of the cycle comes through. You've got to process that information. You've got to be able to look at it and figure out what it is. Then you've got to conduct analysis on that information, and the cycle keeps going on through, and then you have to disseminate that information. It has to go to the right people. And then I would add a what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would add a sixth level, and that's using that information. That actionable information has to be put to good use for competitive value, for strategic value, whether if you're a military kind of organization, or it could be putting that information to use as a law enforcement agency.
Well, I think you need to differentiate also between information and intelligence, because that's two different things.
Yeah. So the information that you collect is just information. It's just data. It doesn't become intelligence until it's been through that cycle and has been disseminated correctly to the right people.
Been
Uh,
verified. Yeah.
You know, you've got to have that analysis and that dissemination to that processing of that information and data to actually get a valuable product out of it, because that's really what we're creating here as a corporate intelligence organization. You're creating a product. You've got to have a product that saves or gains your client money, you know, that gives them that competitive edge.
Yeah.
Very well said. You still have to hit the gab, man. I gotta tell you, I'll hand it to you.
He's perfect for my. Why do you think I love having him on the show,
man? I miss that guy.
It's like I underpitch him the softball, and he takes it. So now I want to go back to, you know, we talked about a little bit about the Phoenix Project itself in Vietnam, and kind of how you know, end of the Cold War, the company started, and you mentioned a certain individual that started that company, Jim Fountain.
Yeah.
Now I know that he's going to be the subject of some of our conversations today, and I didn't really know how you wanted to work him into the conversation, but
that could probably be down the road a little bit. I think we got a bunch of stuff to say before Uncle Jim comes in.
Okay. All right. So I want to build up to that. I want
some background. You know,
I don't want to forget him. Definitely.
No.
Yeah, we don't just want to pop him out like just some, you know, casual conversation at a cocktail party. You know, we got.
No, but I
he would love that.
We have to segue into it, right? That's what they like to say.
Exactly.
We'll circle back to Uncle Jim.
And then also, don't let me forget, because I did forget last episode. I did an episode on burn pits, so make sure you guys go back and check that episode out. I think that's the one that's going to be before this one, or it was two before this. But a great episode where I had couple of guys, former Marines, that have health, you know, severe health problems, cancer, and whatnot associated with the burn pit. So that was a great episode. Make sure you guys go back, check that out also. But I forgot where I was heading with this. But anyway.
Yeah, we were talking about Jim.
Listener questions. Don't let me forget listener questions.
Yeah.
So I've got some listener questions that we need to fill too. But
you know, I might add I think the main reason that these guys, I would call them our mentors. We called them our uncles, and the reason they hired us is because we were young and impressionable, and we were moldable in their image, so to speak. I think they had a want and need for young men like us to be able to do this work, and they wanted guys that were fresh and capable, and you know, they really did a good job at motivating us to do this kind of work and think of it as a career path.
And they were, you know, they were living vicariously through us. You know,
indeed,
they were older guys, and we're in our like early 20s. You know, just separated from our services, and you could tell like there was like a glimmer in their eye, like when they were training us up, and we were just soaking it up, and it was 100%. Cool.
They used to, you know, I can't tell you how many times Brad and I were, you know, in some hotel, some Hampton Inn or Holiday Inn, and one of the uncles would assign us to go, you know, talk the front desk clerk into giving us a key for his room, right? You know, go tell them you need a key for my room. And that's not, you know, you can't just go and get somebody else's key. You've got to use an approach, and you've got to use your gift of gab, so to speak, to get that key out of them.
And you know how much of a contrast that was from like the Marine Corps mentality?
Yeah,
it's totally. Things, and to be shown not black and white, but to be shown the gray area by the gray men.
Yeah,
that was the biggest takeaway, I think, from our mentors that I needed.
Was that the Marine Corps hard for you to overcome because of the Marine Corps training? Was it difficult?
I would say it was enlightening. It was like, wait a second, not everything black and white. Yeah. Oh, there's ways that you can actually approach somebody and I mean, in a rudimentary phrase, like Jedi mind trick them. And I didn't know that in the Marine Corps, you know? And so when I came out and I saw these cats operating and teaching us their skill craft and everything, and elicitation and intelligence gathering, these are intelligence officers from back in the day, as we've already established. It was so cool. It was like, man, there is so much more to life outside of the Marine Corps. Now, granted, I was only out of the Marine Corps for a few months.
Yeah.
And that's all I knew from 18 to 23, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm so blessed and lucky that I got to basically flop into Uncle Jim and the Phoenix Consulting Group.
Yep, 100%. It was a life-changing thing for me. I had spent my high school career in military school and in military boarding school. And then I got to the Army, and this was pre 9/11, so this was peacetime military. And I didn't feel like I had a lot going on that front, and was very bored with it. And then all of a sudden I got this, it was actually a guy that was in the counterintelligence detachment of my unit reached out to me and said, "Hey man, would you ever be interested in doing this kind of work, this kind of, corporate intelligence work? If so, let me introduce you to this friend of mine that works for this company." And, next thing you know, I'm doing interviews with Phoenix, and even the interview process was like a movie. It was a real trial in a corporate environment of some of the weirdest questions I've ever been queried. Some of the weirdest experiences just from the interview process, just to see if I was the kind of guy that they wanted to have working for them. And I know Brad had the same experience, and Mitch came to it from my side of the house. So
well, you had been on for a bit before I had come in, and I do remember one of my selection operations was with me, you, Jim, and John Nolan Jr. I don't know if you remember that, but we went to some Korean restaurant.
Yeah.
Remember is that cheese?
Is that cheese? I
cheese?
Do remember that.
We had never seen this type of food that Jim was ordering. And I think, and this was like one of the first times that I had been in contact with. So Jim was definitely like, in pure analysis of me.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see if if I had the brains for this kind of stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But then he wanted to see if I was, going to be able to be a team player. And then he just wanted to see, like, if I could just be one of the guys. And man, I tell you what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. And so it was set that night at that Korean restaurant. And he gave us the spiciest shit I've ever had in my life. You want to see how I was going to respond to, getting trick fucked into eating some ridiculous stuff. And
I think I ate that one morsel and spit it out and put it back on the plate, and then Jim ate it.
Yes.
And
my God.
He almost beat the shit out of me over it. Yeah.
We were laughing so hard that he had to tell us like to chill out because, and so I knew I was in based upon, because he sent me on an op. Like he just sent me somewhere the first time.
And tell you what it was for. He just go here and just.
He gave me the background of what the company was doing and stuff. He goes, hey son, go over here and do this and do that. And so I'm like, okay. And so I went and did it and gathered some intel and brought it back to him. And he's like, okay, we can use that. And we'll send you off. And I'll actually, I hadn't even met him yet. He sent me on this blind op. And then we went to the Korean restaurant. I remember was that in Seattle or something?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, that was your break-in kind of mission right there. To see.
Yeah, he just wanted to see if I was going to be like, swim, sink or swim.
Yeah.
Did you have one of those, Mitch? Did you get a little test run?
Yes and no. I mean, where I could, back in the Marine Corps, the closest thing I ever came to, because they teach you how to, shoot, fight, raise hell, and fight until there's no fucking end. But I picked up message traffic back in the day for the colonel I worked for, and I used to get these stacks and stacks of shit that come off this old teletype machine, and it read through this stuff, and they gave me subject matter that I had to screen through.
I think we're losing Mitch.
Is everybody froze, or is it just?
No, I think it's just Mitch.
Okay.
Mitch, you froze up there, buddy.
Semi-froze. Okay.
I think the powers that be know what we're talking about. They're trying to...
Too bad. So I'd pick up message traffic for the colonel I worked for. I'd have to go through it, review it, segregate it, figure out what he wanted, didn't want. And I never ever thought about it again until I started working with Bryan, and he asked me to come on board, and I'd gone out on my first job. I think we went to some sushi. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. The only thing I knew about the company was this name John Nolan popped up. And back in the day, we used to listen to late night AM radio while we were traveling. And John
Bell, Art Bell.
He was a frequent guest on the Art Bell show. That's right.
Yep.
No,
and so,
shit. That's probably where I've heard that name. That's familiar.
Oh yeah, it's a sign of age, but
damn, I got him again.
So Art Bell had John Nolan Sr.
John Nolan.
Sorry, you're skipping out on us, Mitch. I think your Wi-Fi is going glitchy.
Not so much 5x5 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got a storm going on there or something?
But yeah, John Nolan was on Art Bell talking about competitive intelligence. But one of the other things that he was talking about was the Stargate program and remote viewing. And
oh no.
So yeah, John Nolan was actually, and he was a Phoenix veteran from the Phoenix program in Vietnam, but he was also one of the men who stared at goats. So there was there's that whole project that was going on was very much in Mr. Nolan's wheelhouse as a case officer, as a military officer, etc. He was very much involved in that. And his good friend, Jim Fountain, his co-founder in the company, held no respect for that Stargate shit. So that was Jim's take on it. I even talked to Jim about it. He was like, I don't believe in that bullshit. But, John's all about it. But, I could care less about it. I'm a real spy, But, yeah. That was a big thing for John on the he wrote a book called Confidential, and John is still with us. He's
oh wow. Why didn't you get him on with us?
we should have him on. He would be a great one to have on with us for sure.
We could do another episode with him.
Yeah, he's great.
Dude, I love the Art Bell show, and I'm sure I've heard him on there.
I still have a copy of my book, Confidential. I ended up with it somewhere at the office or something, and ran into John and said, "John, will you sign my book?" He goes, "Yeah." And he's signed my book and everything. I got it somewhere here in the house. But that was fun stuff. But
awesome.
So that was my introduction. My intro to Phoenix, and then I went out on a job with Bryan, and we were at it was before we went out and were socializing. We were on a job, and it's like one of the people we were working with was like in extreme martial arts. And Jim was standing next to me. He says, "See that guy over there?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "He's a bad motherfucker." I said, "Really?" He goes, "He's a bad motherfucker." He said, "You boys need to take him down." He said, "You get 4 people to help you, and you don't fucking stop until he's down." I said, "Sir, yes, sir." He said, "That's all I have to say." And he walked off. And I'm like, "Bryan, what are we doing?"
At least he gave you a heads up what you're getting involved with, right?
Straight shooter.
Yeah.
Straight up.
I would say that I guess we're talking about Jim, so here we are.
Here we are.
It wasn't like they just scooped me off the street. I remember he knew that I was an embassy guard, and at the time in the Marine Corps, we were trained to be the embassy guards, but our main priority was classified information protection.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was based upon my understanding of classified information and protecting it, and that I basically the door opened for me for Phoenix through a mutual friend that I served in the Marine Corps with during embassy guard training, and she was a female. and they had opened up the MSG, Marine Security Guard, 2 females after a big hiatus of where I guess there were some problems. And so me being my hard dick self back in the day, I'm like, all right, you want to be females and do this job with us? When it comes to the combatives, I ain't going to hold back. And those instructors, everybody else was holding back. And that probably could go into a whole nother, podcast about females and combat and all that. But anyway, I would hit them as hard as
I'm not going to get into that. I'm not opening that can of worms.
Yeah. Well, as Hegseth came down with the new requirements to get to, be in a combat MOS, is everybody's going to be on the same bar, right? Yeah. Well, so I was instituting that even back in the day in 1997. And so one of the females, named Penny, she's a Georgia peach. She's tough, and I wouldn't hold back. And the instructors saw that and they liked that. Well, so did she, because she didn't want to be pampered, and she wanted to, wanted to be,
get toughened up.
Yeah, she wanted, hit me as hard as I remember. She yelled at me one time. She thought I was holding back. I'm like, well, I just might be a big old pansy then if I can't hit you hard enough. But anyway, she went to Dar es Salaam, the other bombed embassy, and I went to Nairobi, Kenya, the bombed embassy. And then we both, out of coincidence, irony, written in the stars or something, both EAS'd out of the Marine Corps together, and we showed up at Quantico together. And it's like, oh, hey, how you doing, Penny? She got hired on by Phoenix, and I went to go work contracts for like union Teamster disputes, and I was in Springfield, Missouri, and the company that I was working for was so shitty that most of the people crossed the line and joined the Teamsters.
No way.
Because our work conditions were terrible. Everything was terrible. I was a driver for them, and they wouldn't let me sleep. Like, they expect me to drive 24 hours at all times. So I called Penny and started crying to her about, the conditions. And she's like, hey, let me introduce you to Jim Fountain. Now, he's on some really wild and crazy stuff that we're used to, but I think maybe it could work out for you. I said, okay. And so that's how I got into the Phoenix, really, was through her. It's so odd that our paths crossed like that, intertwined.
Yeah. Fortuitous. Maybe.
I got to throw this in there, Brad. I got to work with Penny on a handful of stuff once things were cranking along, and I feel honored to this day. Just for shits and giggles. Hey, Penny, you want to go do a dumpster dive with me? Without even hesitating. Oh, fuck yeah! When are we going? I mean, she just. Yeah, little tiny thing, man. She was a bad mofo. Penny was bad to the bone. Forced to be reckoned with.
Do we want to get into Jim now, or we want to save that and get into talking about what red teaming is? And
let's talk about red teaming.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, let's.
That's what we did first, Brian. Is all red team for Phoenix.
Yeah, the beginning of my career with Jim was really focused on red team operations, and red team operations are basically where you are conducting a penetration test on your client or on your own forces, and you use all means and methods to infiltrate or to exploit your client's assets and see what kind of information you can gather, what kind of access you can gain.
And we would do that as we were operating offensively, and then when a defensive operation would come up for one of these red teams, me and Brian and Penny and John Yolen Jr. and some other people would all show up, and it would be a team effort.
Yeah. So we would target a location, let's say like the aerospace company we were targeting. So that was our client, and we get there on week 1 and we start collecting information. That boils down to clipping, magazine clippings, articles. We're going and diving their dumpsters and getting bags of trash from their corporate headquarters and stealing that trash, taking it back to the hotel, and then taking, this is back before the internet for the most part. So we're taking clippings of letterhead and getting the logos out and making our own ID cards, because we've also looked at what their ID cards look like, their access control cards. And
how did you get access to those? Were you taking?
They look like the Hampton Inn.
I'll tell you exactly how. So I'll tell you exactly how. Jim also loved that I smoked cigarettes, because it would give me an opportunity and a reason to stand outside of a building. And I would stand outside of a building in front of that research and development center and act like I was standing outside on break smoking. And I would stand right next to the door that people were using the access control card to go in. And I would just look at it and collect information on it.
Smoking, because I didn't smoke. So I had to
yeah. So, you basically you get a good idea of what the card looks like. And then you tape and glue all those little pieces together and make your own little fake key card, and you laminate it with some Office Depot laminate cards.
And it's a phased operation. Like, these go in phases. So, like, before we even get to penetrate, like he said, there's all this background that we had to do first. And then we were able to use our Hampton Inn key cards that had the magnetic strip on back look like their key cards. And we went to Office Depot or Staples or something, and we created in our hotel rooms as much as we could, identical key cards to the employees. And then that's when we'd hang out at the smoking areas and say, oh, hey, hold on a second. Can you hold the door for a second? And like, oh, yeah, come on in.
Just piggyback in.
Boom, piggyback into that thing. But it took a couple of days for us to assess the security first, and then create those. And then I remember that we all went and told the Hampton Inn desk we lost our cards. Like, there's 4 idiots all at once that lost their cards, so we could get another one. Yeah, we still need to get into our hotel. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, no. Let me ask you this. So, how did you get on the facility? How did you get to?
That's another good question. So
that had to come first before you got something.
Yeah, we would drive up, and normally what would happen is we would drive up in a rental car, park in the parking lot. Typically, Penny was sitting in the car with a radio, and Brad and I would go in like heat with a couple of duffel bags.
I have that down here, that story yeah.
So a couple of duffel bags, and we would piggyback into the facility, and we would typically do that around closing time. So when everybody's getting ready to go home, 5 o'clock, give or take, rush hour.
Did they not have guards?
Yes, they did.
Armed guards, but you just avoid them, and you zip around them and don't look them in the eye. And then,
but they weren't checking IDs at the gate.
No,
because we were sneaking in back.
Yeah,
just convincing other employees that we were part of them, because it was a big company. So not going to,
open parking lot. And now this is the thing; those things changed. They changed protocol, and they add security after these kind of things happen. And we go back and give them our report of how we got in there. We go into the building, and then we go to the bathroom, and we crawl under the sinks, and we sit in the under sink cupboards until Penny says, yeah, everybody's gone out of the parking lot. And that means the building's empty. And then we emerge from our hiding spots. We walk around the facility, and we still
take pictures.
We were stealing Rolodexes, laptops, taking documents, white papers. And then if there was a security guard, we would pretend that we were safety and security inspectors.
Do you remember the biggest thing that we were able to get by everybody, even when we did during the day ops, is if
fire extinguishers.
Fire extinguishers, but here's the best one. If you put a tape measure on your belt, and you have a clipboard, and they had an internal fire and security division who hired us, they were the ones who hired us. But if you ran into these people and they asked you what you're doing, you could pull out this tape measure and be like, is this handicap accessible? And they would be like, oh, okay, sir. Okay. That just completely melted them, and we could just have free reign to this place.
Now, I want to remind our listeners that this is a major aerospace company.
Major. Yeah. The biggest in the world.
The biggest. Space and aerospace.
Yeah.
company. So, but this
and
was
their
give me
president.
This is the 80s or 90s. This is the 90s, right?
So this is
Early
late 90s,
2000s.
early 2000s.
Okay, late
Their
90s.
their president did not want that security and fire and safety security to even do this, and he made the statement to them is that we could never be penetrated. We could never be a source of espionage.
Yeah.
And there was
Now-
one day,
And
And
I
also-
stole his laptop and his Rolodex.
and I
Also,
sat in his desk.
hold on. I want
Okay.
to remind our listeners that they hired you to do this. This is red teaming.
Yes.
Right.
Because they wanted to test
Legal.
their internal security. So this major company hired your company, which is why you guys are doing this. So I just want to clarify
Yes.
some of our listeners.
But they did not tell.
You're
the
not doing this
president-
for a competitive company. So
Exactly. So
Okay.
they didn't tell the president because he was against it. So they went ahead and did it anyway.
yeah.
And there was at one point where I was sitting in his chair with my feet up on this president's desk, and we took pictures with those disposable cameras because this is before we had cell phones that would actually be a camera too.
Yeah.
And we took pictures, and
Like
I
those that
remember-
you use at weddings and things. Those
yeah. And I remember he had because we were supposed to target a particular plane that they were doing and get as much intel on it. And there was a schematics board of this damn plane in the background. So not only did I get the schematics of this airplane, I sat in his desk with my feet up or sat in his chair with my feet up on his desk and took that picture with this, classified airplane with me with my feet. Yeah, it was fantastic.
And then afterward, we go back and we give an after action review, a full report to the client on how we infiltrated their facility.
Oh boy, they loved us.
And sometimes people lost their jobs over it. People always lost their shit over it.
Now, did you guys do any? You hear the stories of the employees. They'll go hang out at a bar afterwards. Did you guys do any of that?
Oh yeah,
go at
A
the
ton.
after
a ton of
work
it.
places to get information. Talk
Yep.
about some of those stories.
Well, so you have a team of people that work in this place, and they're all, pioneering this project. They don't stop talking about that stuff inside the confines of the building. They go to Applebee's. They all sit at the table and they continue the conversation. And me and Bryan would be at the table sitting just back to back and sitting there just listening, taking notes.
Now, did you ever interact with anybody? Or were
Certainly.
you just
Yep.
eavesdropping?
Yep.
Because I would
Yeah.
think maybe that might compromise when you're infiltrating. That it's like, oh, that's the guy at the bar. What's he doing?
Well,
Measuring.
I got caught bigger than life one day by one of the employees because he had set down a bunch of classified documents in some kind of common area and went to go talk to somebody. And I skimmied in there and I grabbed that and I was making my way with it. He's like, hey, what are you doing? And I turned around. Of course, I'm shitting my pants. I just got caught, handing the cookie jar, holding all this guy's stuff. And I had to say, well, you know what I'm doing? And you have to turn the tables. Jim taught me this. You got to turn the tables on them quick to gain the advantage in this situation. And I'm like, well, sir, I am fire and security. And I saw you put down all of this classified information out in the open. And so I took it to secure it for one. And then I'm going to have to probably talk to some people about this. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so
I have
sorry.
to report you.
Oh, he surrendered to me. And I'm like, well, okay, here you go. I'll be a nice guy.
Don't
And
let it
turns
happen
out I'm like,
again.
Woo!
Yeah.
Almost had to use my get out of jail free card on that one.
I had to knock the window out of a Lincoln Navigator, brand new Lincoln Navigator rental car. I was diving a dumpster, got everything out of the dumpster, had my Navigator sitting there idling, and got all the trash ready to put in the back hatch, and realized I have locked my keys in the car, and the car is running. This is before the key fobs would recognize the car.
Yeah.
And I look around the corner and I see the flashing light on the security truck coming at me. And I just looked down, grabbed a brick that was sitting next to the dumpster, threw it through the window, got in and drove off.
I remember you telling me about this. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and called Jim and said, "Hey, I screwed up. I had to bust the window out of the Navigator." And he's like, "Did you get the insurance?" I was, "Yes, sir, I did."
Yes, sir.
He goes, "All right, you're good."
Oh, good. Yeah, you got the insurance.
So you do what you got to do.
Now, I was on an op one time. This was offensive. And I, for some reason, whether it was his fault, my fault, I didn't know the ROE at the time, you know, what I could do and what I couldn't do on an offensive op. I was very new. And I was hopping a fence to go at this company and get their stuff and come back. And so Jim's like, "Man, this is really good stuff." He's like, "So how are you getting it?" I'm like, "Well, I hopped that fence." He's like, "Whoa, hold on a second. Whoa, you don't hop fences." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "No, yeah, that's not a
why not?
Because
Why
it's
not?
illegal. It's trespassing."
Yeah, it becomes theft at that point.
Yeah,
even if you're red teaming.
Not on a red
We're
team.
not
On a
red
red
team.
team, that's different.
Oh, that's
on a red
not
team.
Sorry, I skipped the focus here of the conversation. So we'll get back to the red team. Sorry, I rabbit trailed that off.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, on a red team, all bets are off. On an offensive op, you know, you have to stay within the laws.
Yeah.
Or you can't conduct crime to collect intelligence.
So this major aerospace organization, after you guys did this, you red teamed them, showing them their flaws, their weaknesses. Did they go in and implement your suggestions on beefing up the security? And then
I hope.
Do they hire you to go and try and do it again after the fact?
No. So we weren't part of the consultation afterwards. We were the penetrator field operatives of that.
Yeah.
And so
as a matter of fact, you know, Phoenix had a lot of different offices. So they had different skill sets, different levels of expertise, different types of expertise. They even had
analysts, everything.
Yeah, they had pulp analysts, and a pulp analyst is basically somebody that sits in a room all day and takes shredded paper from shred bags and tapes it all back together, puts it all back together, and makes new documents again so that you can read those documents that have been shredded.
That would be the worst job ever.
Hey, I
can you imagine?
Put that into a FedEx box and send it away because that wasn't my problem.
Yeah,
but there was.
That was going to be one of my questions. Is when you guys do the dumpster diving back in those days, were the shredders a big thing?
Oh yeah,
the cross cuts we couldn't do anything with. It really screwed things. But the straight stripped ones. I know you said pulp, but pulp is the cross cut. But they would put the stripped ones together.
Yeah, you know, we would get all of this paper and have it piled in our hotel rooms, and it would smell like
bananas
like
and coffee
and
grinds.
Bananas and old coffee.
Bananas and coffee grinds, man. I can smell.
Oh, it was horrible, just horrible. And you know, we would sift through that stuff and then find the best documents and stuff them in FedEx boxes and send them back to Huntsville.
I mean, it'd be like wet.
It would be gross, just horrible. They would stink. You'd take them to the FedEx drop just fast as you could, just to get them out of your car or out of your hotel.
But when you brought up,
you rent an extra room just to do that stuff in. That way,
When Bryan brought up the heat reference, I will never forget. He and I and Penny had penetrated the aerospace place, and we did it through the smoking section break area. Got in there, and we raped this building. Like, we had big black duffel bags stuffed because we hid the duffel bags in the bathroom. And there was also this conference room that was off to the side. Remember that one?
Yeah.
That nobody was using at the time. We had 3 or 4 of these huge, big black duffel bags, and like we're strapping them over us. And Penny was in the car as a getaway, but she had to carry a big ass black bag to the car. And then now it was my turn, or I think it was Bryan's turn. And then we were looking around, and then Bryan went to the car. So it was like that whole scene in Heat where it's like they're coming out with the money in the black bags. And I'm watching Bryan do this, and I'm watching Penny made it, and Bryan's going, and I could hear that music that was playing in the background in Heat when Bryan was walking across that parking lot. And then I was like, okay, now it's my turn. As I'm doing the the shuffle to the car. I'm like, and we threw him in there. We're looking around like, all right, get the fuck out of here.
Well, I mean, this is risky things that you guys are doing, because are these guards armed?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So you could get shot doing this.
Oh, we try not to.
Well, I know you try not to, but
yeah.
At the same time, it's just like that one guy caught you with that
stuff. Oh yeah.
You know.
Well, and you know what you're doing is really you're using tradecraft to get around those guards. You're doing things like moving a camera. You know, we would go to back in the day. You know, they had cameras on old elbow tilts, and we would go to Home Depot and get a long pole, a long stick, and just drive up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just move that camera to where it wasn't pointing at where we were doing our movement. And we would leave it that way all week while we were exploiting that facility.
And put that in our report.
And put it in the report. But it also compromised the security guard's ability to see us on the camera. So, you know, and unless they were on top of things, then they're not going to fix it or check it out.
What about internal cameras? Did they have internal cameras also? Do you guys had to?
No, man.
They were coming around at that time. They were coming around, and sometimes, you know, that was another issue. You could get up there and use a ladder and paint over them. There's all kinds of things that you could do on a red team to exploit it.
Yeah. So Mitch was going to say something a minute ago. I saw you wanting to jump in.
Yeah. You know, I was just going to say,
Mitch, you just got to jump in, man. You just got to interrupt.
Yeah. For the listeners, if you have documents you need to shred, just get one of those cross-cut and shred into those little tiny, 1/8 by 1/8 little pieces of pulverized paper. That's what you use to shred. I mean, you get what you pay for. So if you are shredding, buy the right shredder. It saves us a lot of time and aggravation.
Well, Mitch, you know how that came about, the cross-cut? It was the Iranian embassy that got swarmed, and they only had the type of, because I learned this in MSG school or embassy guard school, they only had the strip cut shredders at the time, and they had millions or a bunch of people tape these back together and then see our classified info from that embassy overrun back in the day. So that's how the cross cut shredding came about.
Now, what is the cross cut versus?
Instead of strips, it's cuts this way, cuts that way. So it turns it into pulp basically.
So you get a double cut.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was in the 80s, when I was in the Marine Corps, I'd have to take our message traffic. They called it a burn center, and you bring it these bags of traffic to the burn center. You had to sit there and sign it in and watch somebody carry it and put it into the chute for this incinerator. They run this thing like every couple of hours or something on certain days of the week before we had the shredders. But yeah, I mean, it's just paper, leftover paper, dumpsters, communication in paper, any material. And today, I mean, we don't see CDs anymore, but, you can rejuvenate USB drives and all kinds of other stuff. So it's we went from smelly banana coffee stained paper to, now it's all about thumb drives and open access.
Yep. I mean, the world has definitely changed tremendously since we started out in this business. I'm certainly still in this business. Mitch and Brad are certainly still in this business, and the methodologies change, and you have to go with the flow and go with the change of technology. It's a real sea change in what we used to do on that front, and it's changing every single day with things like AI.
We're going to get into that. I want to get into where it's headed. I don't want to do that just yet, but because I still want to stick to some of these stories. There was another one that we inadvertently we found out that you guys were a part of this also when I was reading some of the case studies, and there was one with, and I think you said it was okay if I mention the companies like the Procter and Gamble.
Yeah, you're fine.
Thing. Let me just pull it up. So in 2001, Procter and Gamble admitted that they launched a spy mission for their core competitor, Unilever, to gather some inside scoop. Their cunning corporate espionage plan, which P&G referred to as an unfortunate incident, finger quotes, including going through Unilever's trash in search of documents, Although if Unilever habitually throws away full documents entitled super secret product information that will crush P&G, their days as an industry leader are numbered. So, I mean, I don't know that this tells us. So why don't you go in and tell us about what this Unilever versus the P&G is all about and how you guys were a part of that.
Brad and I both were assigned to that project by Phoenix, but Brad was much more involved in it than I was. As a matter of fact, I think Brad was actually brought into the court case in the early phases of it, and but he's got a good story to tell on that.
Yeah. So this was an offensive operation. It was to gather intelligence on hair care products, Suave. And so P&G hires Phoenix Consulting Group to gather this intel, this competitive business intelligence stuff. And it was really a stroke of luck that they were using a dumpster that was in a private or in a public alley to throw away all of their very classified, secret, confidential information. They just dumped it into this dumpster.
Proprietary information.
Yeah, proprietary. Sorry. So they dumped all this proprietary information on their hair care products in this dumpster, and I was rolling up there in a rental minivan and just filling the minivan full of everything they threw away. And I did this for about a month. And at that time, Jim wanted me.
They weren't shredding it?
No, just throwing it straight in this dumpster.
Okay.
Everything that they were trying, everything P&G wanted, they were getting. And Jim had asked what type of techniques how I was gathering the intel. And I told him, Jim, I'm not doing anything else because it seems to be a waste of time. Because this dumpster is the honeypot to get this intel, to get their proprietary.
And this isn't illegal because once they dispose of it, and especially in a public dumpster, then it's.
Yeah, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy when you dump that into a dumpster into a public alley. See, that got down to the nitty gritty on that during our deposition on all this. So what had happened is that after about, I don't know, a few months of me doing this, sending it to the analysts and them preparing. Now Phoenix prepared the final brief or what they got to P&G, and at the time I remember that the CEO P&G was a Pepper, and I remember he told Phoenix Consulting Group that we gathered so much proprietary information and it was so overwhelming that there was no way that they would be able to use that information to try to produce a competitive product because it would be so glaringly obvious that that's how it came. So here's what P&G did. P&G, their position was that Phoenix Consulting Group went rogue. So they threw us under the bus. They threw Phoenix under the bus and said, well, we didn't expect them or tell them to do this, which they did. But what had happened is it was just so lucrative, they couldn't do anything with it. So they decided to distance themselves from Phoenix Consulting Group.
Gotcha.
So here we're like, hey, we did all of our good jobs. We sent this all off, and they gave them everything they could ever hope and dream to have, but it was too much. So that's when the lawsuit came. And what had happened is Pepper contacted Unilever and just said that, hey, we hired this company to get some information on you, competitive business intelligence information. And then they said, well, they went beyond the scope of what we wanted them to do and blah, blah, blah. So they threw us under the bus. So Phoenix had to hire their attorneys. And we met in Huntsville, Alabama, and had a deposition about it all. And it ended up settling out of court for like $22 or $25 million.
Oh, wow. Y'all had to pay them? Phoenix Group had to pay them?
P&G had to pay Unilever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. But as far as Phoenix Group, y'all didn't have to.
I don't know what happened beyond my pay grade at that time.
I got you.
But yeah, I did. That was the first time I sat on a deposition and got to see like $600-700 an hour New York lawyers, interrogate me. And it was kind of funny because now they're interrogating me, but I'm an interrogator, and we've just been, trained how to interrogate, interrogation and
exactly all their,
I knew all of their
all the
tricks and their ploys and everything. So that was quite ironic.
I had heard a story between Pepsi and Coca-Cola. There was this Coca-Cola employee that had I guess she was disgruntled or something, and she somehow got the formula. She had she was high enough up and whatnot, but she got the formula for the Coke, and then Coke was also coming out with one of their new products or something. And she saw this as a way to, I guess, get them back or, whatever. But she took it to Pepsi, and Pepsi was kind of did something you wouldn't expect. They basically went to Coke and said, "Hey, you've got this employee that's trying to, screw you guys over."
Yeah.
And then they did a sting on this lady that was trying to do it. And I think she ended up spending like 8 years or something in jail or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it behooves a company to cooperate with law enforcement to keep that kind of thing from happening, because it will destroy your bottom line.
Do you think that they did that because maybe they thought they were getting stung at that?
Well, I'll tell you exactly why any company does anything, and it's because the shareholders expect them to do that. That's one of the things that actually minimizes in offensive operations, especially when you're dealing with hostile foreign intelligence services. So, the foreign intelligence services of other countries do not have these ethical limitations and legal limitations on collecting American or otherwise industry data.
China,
and they will use crime. They will use nefarious methodologies to gain that kind of information. And what happens is, if a company is targeted, they don't want a bunch of press and media from an arrest or from a lawsuit or any of that kind of thing. They don't want their shareholders to know that they've been compromised. It makes their stock fall. So, you see that kind of dynamic on the security side of the house, where the companies are very unwilling to recognize this problem, at least publicly. They'll try to fix it, internally, but they don't want it to go out into the public sphere and have discovery, have evidence, that kind of thing that's brought out for their shareholders and stockholders to digest.
Yeah.
The Firebird M50 targets are a new, low-noise version of our popular 50 bio-detonating target. M50 targets are self-contained, pyrotechnic, reactive targets that are legal, safe, and easy to transport. Use the exclusive code TL15 for 15% off all orders at firebirdtargets.com. Firebird Targets is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade.
Speaking of China and, the big thing with, Trump and, I guess it was pre-Trump. It was the Biden administration, but they were trying to TikTok, the whole thing with TikTok.
Yeah.
This is China's way of gathering information and, whatnot. What y'all's take on the whole TikTok thing?
Marty, I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah.
Y'all go ahead.
TikTok. Here's my thing on TikTok. A lot of people don't realize when you sign up for a service, they don't read the fine print. They don't read the permissions. They don't read any disclaimers, legal liability, anything about use of material that you willingly provide. Your account information, your access to your photographs, locations, everything is on there. So when people sign up for TikTok, which I don't have a TikTok account, didn't want one. I knew where it came from. I knew where it was going. It was basically of the world's biggest honeypot for everything and anything. And you're basically giving the producer of that product the right to take everything and anything that you just granted them access to by saying allow while either using this application or allow all the time, whatever it is. Once you give them access to it, they're going to go in. They can take whatever they want. They've got processes and they've got their own AI, if you want to call it that, to harvest information, to look for things. And
but that's no different than Google or Instagram or Facebook, or they all do that.
That's true. When you give when you're using a communication product and you give somebody permission to use that, and I've run into this professionally because we've had to use information from social sites, video, imaging, testimony, still photographs, geolocation data. I've had to use this in actual criminal defense cases, prosecutions, and law enforcement. And people, well, how dare they give that away? Well, they can't do that. I signed a disclaimer saying, hey, Facebook, you can't use my photos or any of that. It doesn't mean anything. When you became a subscriber to that platform, you gave away every right to privacy or protection that you had, because most people don't take the time to read anything. They're only fast. It's just like going for a job, right? They'll sign away everything for background checks, this, that, the other, all their interests in the job.
It's become so commonplace now that, in order, there's like, if I don't, then I don't get to use that service. So if I don't sign all this crap, then I can't use Netflix, I can't use Instagram, I can't use your phone, your phone service. People don't really, read through your phone contract and what all it says and what all you're giving away there. It's
you're allowing them you're allowing them to go in your underwear drawer. And I'm going to take this to another level too, because you brought up TikTok. There's a company that manufactured digital video recorders, and for a lot of this equipment, a lot of these companies are based out of PROC. And what happened was there were back doors that were built into all of this. I shouldn't say all, that's not fair. A lot of the equipment had back doors built into it. And again, once you activate that device, the user manual's in there. There's disclaimers, disclosures. Everybody throws it right in the trash. And somebody finally got smart when they figured out that intelligence and imaging, that was being brought back to us was coming from these digital video recorders, and the groups or the agencies figured out how they got in. Of all people, John McCain, former Senator John McCain, came in, whether people love him or hate him. He came in and he incorporated the McCain Act. And the McCain Act specifically addressed the production of American products and the production of Chinese products, and what can be allowed, what can't be allowed for use in federal government facilities and government facilities, because it was so widespread. So all they did was, okay, so now you can't use this DVR by brand because they've been, banished by the U.S. government. So let's do something else. Let's create a social media platform that everybody can do everything with. Now we've got everything. They're voluntarily dumping everything, all their drawers, into the platform, and they gave us permission to go in as we want. We can listen, we can view, we can remotely activate, deactivate. It's almost like having a hacked cell phone, really, at the end of the day, if somebody chooses to do that.
When you mentioned that too, it's software. The software that you download, there's all these user agreements, and then they send you these things. We're collecting this data, give us permission, blah, blah, blah. But it's, and the apps on your phone too. When you download an app, there's this little user agreement thing that nobody ever reads, but you check it off because you want the app, and you can't get it unless you check it off. Everybody's collecting our data. It's going everywhere. Everybody has it. It's everywhere. And then you hear about all these breaches because, like AT&T, is that we never sell your data and it's secure data, but then you get a message from AT&T. It's like, well, our servers were hacked and your data may be compromised.
And here's a funny story I want to throw in. And Bryan was, I think Bryan, you did this with me a couple of times. Back when DNA collection first started coming around, and people want to know, hey, is that my kid? Is it not my kid? For different reasons, people wanted DNA. What we actually did, and this is part of, back from our backgrounds, we know that if you offer somebody something for free that's reasonable, that they're going to take advantage of it. we would get people gift cards to go to certain restaurants in Nashville before Nashville was big and popular and cool with everything and anything. We'd send them to these 4-star restaurants. What we did was we had agreements worked out with certain people where we could go into that same restaurant. We would videotape that individual drinking from the coffee cups, using the silverware, using the plates, the dishes, touching the glasses. We would get these people to go dine in that restaurant. When they were done with their meal, the owner would physically go over and gently collect everything that was there and put it into a paper bag for us. We'd send that off to a lab, and now we had DNA samples of everybody sitting at that table, and we had it on video. So if somebody wanted to contest it, it's like, no, they came in and ate for free on our dime. We paid for the meal. We paid for the software. We paid for the meal. We paid for the dishes. We paid for the whole experience. They volunteered to come in and have a free meal. So sorry, now we know who daddy or mommy is, or, who's related to who. We did that a handful of times in Nashville. So that's, part of real intelligence that a lot of people do overlook. But again, with relation to TikTok, and I'll call them honeypots because I think they are honeypots in my opinion. A collection site for everything and anything, as long as you get somebody to join.
Yeah, and now speaking of AI, now you've got a whole nother animal that's tracking you and analyzing you, and everything from your. Now Twitter or X has Grok right there in the bottom that you can ask any question. And Grok is also collecting on you as you go through your X experience. Test it out. Go to Grok and start asking it questions about yourself.
What's that's a great point, but like Alexa.
Sure. Alexa is another one.
Even when you're not interacting with it, it's still
and now AI has really become the real force multiplier, the real sea change in competitive intelligence. So now you can have AI agents, which are an AI agent is basically an app or the interface that you use to access AI data collection or large language type of information. And something like Grok or Chat GPT, these are AI agents that you can use, but you can also assign these AIs to do workload and to cultivate and create strategies and formulas to solve competitive issues, to solve problems within your company. The same things can be applied for military strategy or
going to Mars.
Yeah, exactly. So having everybody in the world now has their own professional intelligence analysts in their back pocket. Not only can you access that data now, but you can fully cycle through the intelligence cycle, and you can process that data with AI. You can assign AI to conduct a workload and even to disseminate that information correctly. You just have to prompt it correctly and assign it its values in the right way. And that's something that we're doing at SAPS. We use at SAPS and Finsbridge both. We're really hedging our strategy and our capability with AI and using these AI agents to create product for our clients and to streamline our business to give us a leg up on our competitor. And it's working tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of AI, I just used an AI platform. There was an issue with something I was working on where an officer took a phone from an individual. The individual voluntary had to give up the phone when he was booked. And the officer claimed that he went into the phone and put it in airplane mode. But what the officer did was, after he put it in airplane mode, he went into the phone and deactivated the owner of the phone's password on the phone. at that point, I knew there was a question about it because there was a conflict with rules of evidence, especially electronic evidence. So instead of me hunting for this for 4 days straight, I was able to use the platform that I use. It's a paid subscription. I used that, and I came up with 26 examples of how that officer violated that individual's Fourth and Fifth Amendment within reason. But it came up with 26 sightings in less than 5 minutes. I watched the donut spinning, waiting for an answer. And every single answer that it came up with was plausible. It was reasonable. I'm not a lawyer, but I can, use common sense. I presented that to the firm that I was working with, and they were just blown away. They said, yeah, there is a fine line between that. It's what is the court which way are they willing to go with this? I said, that's not my job. I found the references for you, and I cited cases for you on the intrusion on that device. So we'll see where it goes, but and I was always against AI. I thought of AI as it's just an overinflated Google, right? You just got to sift through all the information. No, I'm sold on it now as far as research and development goes, and using it, proactively, and using it, in a defensive manner, like Bryan was saying. I mean, you have to do both with AI.
Yeah.
So I guess we've kind of jumped to, where, espionage is kind of headed, and AI. I mean, obviously AI is for everything now. Everybody's using it for everything. So like we said, to solve quantitative problems and mathematical formulas, to discovery for law cases, it's used for everything. What are some other things, talk about the old school days. I mean, you guys were using more HUMIT and, open source and human intel. What were some other things that you had at your disposal, tools of the trade, I guess we would say?
Yeah, Mitch and I have both worked with a lot of different sound magnification devices over the years. People having a discussion in public. That's also, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy if you're talking in public and I can hear it with a microphone. And back in the day, that used to be a real tool that got put to use a lot.
Is that like one of those things you see on the TV shows where they got these giant
parabolic microphones, shotgun mics? Exactly. Yeah. There's a great movie. There's Gene Hackman recently died, and there's a great movie called The Conversation. You should download it on Amazon, and it's a whole drama about a private investigator, a wireman, a professional surveillance specialist that conducts an operation using parabolic microphones, and this is back in the 70s, using parabolic microphones to listen to a conversation. And the whole movie is about the ramifications of that one conversation that he listened to with that microphone. It's a really good one. Really good Gene Hackman flick.
What was the name of it?
It's called The Conversation.
The Conversation. Okay.
In addition to the parabolic mic, there's a little bit of trivia and fun history. One of the companies that still makes a lot of equipment for law enforcement and other agencies, Saul Mineroff out of New York. Yeah. Saul was always he was a big granddaddy as far as building everything and anything to do with audio more than video. And they actually used to sell to hobbyists. This is how good they were. They sold hobbyists this kit that contained a shotgun microphone made by a German company that, I kid you not, was probably about 2.5 feet long. They had a custom built amplifier, and they have this amplifier tuned to pick up the actual frequency of birds. And they built this whole bird watching kit. Now, naturally, us being who we are, I bought this bird watching microphone kit and took it out to the park and put it to use. And it picked up a lot more than the Blue Jays and the Cardinals and the Orioles were cheaping about. And the sensitivity was amazing. Old school stuff. The hardest thing was, how do you sit at a park bench with a broomstick on your shoulder, and a pair of headphones on, like listening. But there's a whole hobby called bird watching. I don't know if people still do it as much as they used to, but
I'm sure they do.
There were things, household items that you would convert or take existing items and use that for other things. And Saul Mineroff back in time, he was the guy that authenticated. It's a piece of old trivia. He authenticated the White House tapes when they went to impeach former President Richard Nixon. That was his big moment in time as an audio specialist. But at the end of the day, his company was all about the collection of audio for everything from financial to mob cases, RICO cases, etc. If there was an agency that needed a piece of equipment, they typically went to Mineroff to build it. He had this.
You mentioned bird watching. Ian Fleming, James Bond. That's how James Bond, he came up with the name. Is there was a bird watching book, and it was by James Bond was the author. That's how Ian Fleming came up with.
Interesting.
There's also some pretty crazy technical ways of collecting audio data. One of the ways that you may see a hostile foreign intelligence service collect information on you, because I would think that this would be illegal, but they can point a laser at a window that you're behind. So if you're in a room, they can point a laser at that window pane and bounce that laser back to a receiver that translates the vibrations in the window pane of your voice talking inside that room. And that's technology that was created in the 80s, and because I saw it work, I saw it used, and I know the capability is much greater now. And to think that the Chinese or the Indians or the Israelis or the Germans or whoever wouldn't use that information or use that kind of technology against an American company to gain an advantage, is missing the boat. You'd be kidding yourself if you don't think that they would do that. They will, and they do.
Yeah.
And we do. The American intelligence service, we use all kinds of nefarious methods to collect intelligence, and that's just the rules of the game. So
listening in on your phone.
Well, yeah, the listening in on your phone. We saw
our cameras right now.
That's right, and you could have your phone compromised by clicking a link. Somebody can send you a text message or an email, and if you click on that link, they can open your phone up and have full access to your phone.
Download an app like TikTok.
Yep. We've seen state leaders, national leaders. We've seen billionaires and businessmen compromised in that way in the last 10 years. It's a very easy thing, and that technology is easily purchased. So, that can be used by criminal enterprises, hostile foreign intelligence, unethical businesses, et cetera, to get that kind of information.
Yeah.
And there was something else that, I remember John Nolan and I had this conversation one day, and Brad probably had the same thing, that one thing that Phoenix did also, there was, run training courses to train executives on, how to do things, how to conduct business abroad. And one of the things that John Nolan used to lay down for everybody was, when you say, if you're going to a country or a foreign adversary country, if you want to call it that, you bring a laptop with you, plan on leaving it in that country, because by the time you're there for the first day and you go out to have lunch or dinner and you leave your junk inside your hotel room, the minute you're within 30 feet of that front door of the hotel, 50 people are inside that room, loading it, rigging it, doing everything they want to do to it. Your laptop has been compromised so bad that when the only thing you need to do is check your gentle emails while you're there. And when you leave to go home, just take the laptop and just put it under the bed or something like that. But don't bring it home with you, because the chances are, you're bringing home an infected device, and it's game over from that point. So
I've heard that when you go to, and I guess I'm sure they do it here in America also, but a foreign country, at the airport, they've got devices that are already reading your phone and your laptops and stealing data.
Not to mention on international aircraft. So, when you plug your phone in or you log on to the Wi-Fi on that aircraft, when you're flying from here to there in whatever country you're flying to, the capability does exist to actually start spoofing your phone through that access that you're given that system. And that host country intelligence service can and certainly will gain access to that information and exploit it as they see fit.
Yeah. How do you protect against something like that? Well,
one of the ways to start is using a phone like the unplugged phone. That's a good place to start. It's removing a lot of those tracking capabilities. Some of those back doors are removed. So that's a good first start. You can turn that phone off, whereas you can't turn, your standard iPhone and Samsung. They mostly just don't turn off. You can do that with the unplugged phone, and it also has a kill switch that you can immediately kill the phone and wipe it with one swipe. So, that's where I would start on that front. But it really boils down to just don't say shit. Just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Good luck, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when I travel, especially if I go out of country, I have this little Faraday.
Yep, Faraday bags are great.
That I put my phone in.
Yep.
I drop it in there, and then until I get out of the airport, and away from the airport, then I can, I'll fire my phone back up. But
same for your credit cards.
Yeah.
I would avoid smartwatches in every way. The only time you need to be wearing a smartwatch is scuba diving, because they're really great at it. But the smartwatch is one of the easiest ways to compromise somebody for their location, their data, even their vital, health information can be gotten off of a smartwatch. So be very careful with that. You see, we've recently seen JD Vance, Vice President JD Vance, wearing an Apple Watch, and it's like, man, he really needs to trade that thing in for a Breitling or something.
Secret Service isn't doing their job right.
Something else used all the time too, and it's so easy. I've seen where people have thought they have disposed of Apple devices. And I'm not singling out Apple because I like Apple stuff, no problem with it. But you can sit there and take a pad. You can take an iPad too. It's 10 years old. As long as you can get that pad on that individual's iCloud account, the sky is the limit. I learned a long time ago at a forensics course I went to, is probably around 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. And and we were told this new thing called iCloud is coming. iCloud is going to change the world of cellular and communication forensics. Well, like how? Well, it's going to be storing stuff up there. Well, that's fine. Little did we know that, every one of your devices under your account, as long as it was active and you allowed it to be on there, you did not delete it, it would automatically join those devices. You could power them up and still have access to all your, SMS, photos, anything that's synchronized on their apps. The sky's the limit. So it's just, as old school can be from, using old Fisher-Price baby monitors, a 10-year-old iPad can be just as deadly as the world's most sophisticated signal interception device.
I think one of the biggest euphemisms for the cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. It's not a cloud. You're saving your stuff to someone else's computer. It might be a big computer, might be a mega computer, but it's not a cloud where nobody can get to it. No, you're putting your stuff in somebody else's computer.
Yeah. And I've worked cases where I've had spouses and husbands more on the civil side where they've gone and they bought devices and they'd added it to each other's account, and they'll sit there and just in real time, catching everything, phone calls, voice messages, everything. And they don't have to answer it. They can just sit there and watch it all day long. So, I mean, sometimes you really don't need to think outside of the box. You just need to look at what's inside of the box and what its capabilities are. So it's, today it's difficult, but on the, intelligence gathering side, we would not go after we wouldn't go after somebody's device. I mean, it's one of those things. If somebody offered it to you to examine it legally, that's one thing. But again, unsuspecting individuals.
But there are nefarious players out there, and they will do that. I mean, just because you don't, I mean, don't give them a false sense of security, because there are people out there that will, and they do. So how do they protect themselves? How do you as an individual protect yourself from all this stuff? I mean, we've talked about a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
But
Mitch, why don't you talk to them about TSCM, about technical surveillance countermeasures, some of the gear you've got?
Yeah, and how would you know if you're being hacked or surveilled?
Real good question. I mean, there's a variety of simple ways to figure out if things are going, somebody's listening or grabbing your information. There used to be simple techniques. We called it drilling, where you could actually put different pieces of false information out to a group of people, where I could sit there and say, in an office environment, I could put a note on my desk saying, fire Bryan on Friday. Well, if I leave that on my desk and then, I leave it on my desk and 2 days later, Bryan comes back and says, hey man, I hear I'm getting fired. What's up with that? Somebody's been in my office, right? Or I could sit there and mention I'm going on a vacation to Hong Kong, something very specific, but that could be true, but it's definitely not true. I'm going to Hong Kong on vacation. I'll be gone for 5 days, and I'm gonna give so and so a promotion. Well, if I write that on a piece of paper and crumble it up, throw it in my trash can, and somebody comes back and says, "Hey, I hear Joe's getting a promotion," well, we know somebody's been in our trash can, right? Somebody's been pulling stuff out of my trash. So that's just the tip of the iceberg on, I'll just call it, collection of data, say in a controlled environment, namely an office. Of course, we see devices too. I mean, you go on Amazon, the sky's the limit. You go to eBay. In Europe, most of your listening devices are not illegal, so you can buy some of the coolest stuff on the planet off of these Italian, England markets, because they don't have eavesdropping laws. So, keyboards that are recording keystrokes that will not show up. There's software that will go into computers and keep moving around as a piece of hardware that is recording keystrokes, and every time it hits a certain amount or a certain time, it's sending what you have typed on that keyboard out to another address. This is old school stuff. This isn't anything new. They've introduced multiple USB devices where something as simple as a thumb drive has a company called EDIC. They've turned these into recorders, and they make little tiny recorders the size of little tiny watch batteries. These things will sit there and record on a schedule for 30 days, 60 days, depending, as long as you buy the pedigree device and not a knockoff. Some of the things that we use to find these devices are something, a couple little pieces that I happen to like.
We like show and tell here. Yeah, show us. Little flashlight?
This one's pretty good. Yeah, it's a flashlight.
Okay.
And a lot of times this flashlight is really good because you need to look for things. You need to pull books out. You need to look behind your computer. You need to look at things. If you're using SanDisk SD cards and all of a sudden a pile shows up from Samsung or some other brand, think about the obvious. But a lot of times a flashlight is very handy in finding a recorder, a hitting audio device someplace in a business office residence. Something else I use from this company called Net Ally. This is a Wi-Fi sniffer. It'll sniff out everything on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in a network. If I've got one computer and one Bluetooth headset, in a close proximity, this thing, why do I have 12 of them on there? New Bluetooth technology, especially the low energy stuff, has been being built into hostile listening devices and interception devices. So, again, something like this can pick it up. Will it tell you if it's friendly or foe? You need to have training and understand how networking components of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi work to figure out, what's threatening and what's not. It'll pick up everything from Amazon sticks to, Alexa Alexa modules. The sky's the limit.
And when you say it picks them up, does it give you access to those networks, or just shows you they're around, they're nearby?
It will tell me that there is definitely a presence. This thing's firing up right now. I don't know if it'll show up or not, but
probably not.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's the way the screen is. Anyhow, this device, it'll tell me all the networks that are within a close proximity, the channels, access points, different clients. It's more of a tool for an IT guy, but for countermeasures. If I'm in a cabin and I have one Starlink dish, 10 miles outside of cell service, 5 things show up on here, and I know I've only got 2. There's probably something close by, or we've got a problem. And that's made by a company called I'm not advertising for them. They've been around. Fluke and NetAlly both make these.
That'd be more of an offensive tool that to let you know if somebody might be eavesdropping on you. So,
say that one more time.
I said that's more of an offensive tool to let you know that somebody may be surveying you, or
somebody could have a device intercepting or doing what we call, say, a man in the middle attack, where it has been created to replicate a device that you believe is friendly. Say your internet in your house is ice cream store 1. Well, somebody can replicate ice cream store 1 for the sole purpose of getting in the middle and shutting you down, and then having you sign back in. Now you've used your password on the man in the middle device. Now I've got your username and password for everything, to get into your network, and I can go into your network and start pulling, all of your data and a lot of your traffic. So that's man in the middle attack is very deadly, because everybody's doing everything on wireless today. Another device, is a very expensive proactive device. It's a handheld nonlinear junction detector. I first found out about this through an associate up in Virginia Beach. They actually use this device to check the guys that were playing in the World Chess Championship, and they would scan their bodies with this device to make sure they didn't have anything receiving a signal like a vibration or a pulse, to give them tips on how to play their next move. And what this is for, this detects electronic components, or the presence of electronic components. It's very effective. It can go up through walls and everything else, and concrete blocks and whatnot. Very effective. Here's USB drive moving past it. You can see how, I'm way back here. I'm about 2 feet away.
Yeah, and it detects it. Okay.
So
cool.
this handheld's letting me know that somebody has.
What is it detecting specifically? How does it detect? How does it know?
This is detecting the presence of silicone and different oxides inside of a electronic component, namely a circuit board, resistors, transistors, bits and pieces that are used to build the device. It lets me know that it's sending a radio signal. It's detecting the presence of something is there that fits the description I don't like, and it's telling me, it's telling me how strong of a presence.
Yeah. So you don't want to take it to a strip bar.
No, you don't want to bring this to a strip club. It'd go off with all the probably. Well, no, I don't think the glitter would
overload it.
Overloaded, yeah. No, but we have used this, and I've worked with Bryan, and we've used this, for different, areas. Some people are coming into certain areas. We want to make sure they don't have a listening device, a hidden camera on them. This will pick up a hidden camera like nobody's business, and it's non-confrontational. A little hand wand that just a metal detector sometimes isn't good enough. Oh, it's my belt buckle. It's my shoes. It's this. This will let you know if somebody has something,
What's something like that cost?
This piece right here is about $11,000.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Oh, come on. How many guns you got, Marty?
11. I could buy a lot of guns with 11,000.
It's like buying one Barrett 50 cal, one 338 MRAD.
Yeah. Or
more.
Or
There's
one
one
nod.
more,
I get a pair of nods for that.
one more device that's actually pretty handy.
Is that a camera?
It's handy for I like this because I can see over the top of cabinets and look into things. It's basically a Milwaukee makes it. It's been around for a while.
Yeah, you get these Lowe's.
It's a camera.
Lowe's. Can't you?
It's camera.
Yeah,
Home
Depot, Lowe's.
Exterminators and plumbers and people like that use those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, the biggest thing with devices, if somebody's going to plant something, they have to retrieve it, right? So, if you have an idea of where they could plant something, it's fine. Again, if you have to go into a cabinet that's 9 feet high and you don't have a ladder, you're not going to jump on a counter. This is great for finding that. This is great for working on vehicles. This will find an air tag. It won't find the air tag by the signal itself. But if you have to go, say, under seats or under a dashboard, that's what this is good for because, we all know what an air tag, most of us know what an air tag looks like. So you can use this to get under in the nooks and crannies and find things without having to physically disassemble the vehicle to the point where, it's just to find nothing. This can help you. If you have to use your hands to get in there, then this will help you find it. If somebody has a vehicle and they choose to disassemble it, to disassemble it and hide a device in there, you're going to have to be much more aggressive. These are simple tools of the trade. There's much more sophisticated equipment that we use. It's the same stuff the government uses. It all does the same thing. It will help identify it, and then it's after you to get the device in your hands and neutralize it, document it, and if the case is warranted, take appropriate action.
What is a more sophisticated tool that you use?
The most sophisticated tool? I've got a spectrum analyzer. This right here, this nonlinear junction detector I just had out. This is probably the second most sophisticated. I've got one that's larger. It looks like a push broom that connects to a box. And I can use that to examine walls and look for electronic devices that are hidden into walls. Very effective tool. It's technology's been around for a while. It's nothing new. But this, because it's handheld and portable versus a 50-pound combination set, makes this effective. It is sophisticated. And
do you have any X-ray tools that can see through walls or anything like that?
One of the things we use, Marty, is thermal. So using thermal cameras, basically like FLIR cameras, to look through walls, to look for hot signatures, things that could be a battery or a power source, those kind of things. Mitch and I have used those kind of devices numerous times.
What kind of penetration are you getting with the devices that you're using?
The nonlinear junction detector, the small gray handheld thing, that will penetrate through probably about almost 3 foot of concrete. Sure.
What about thermal that you guys are using, Brian? What kind of are you able
typically
to see?
you're looking at a sheetrock type of thickness.
Yeah.
In my experience, I don't have any experience looking through concrete walls with thermal, but once again, the technology just keeps getting better and better and better. I've got a Holosun thermal on top of my Coyote shotgun, and it's amazing what you can see with that thing. You can put your hand on the wall and see the handprint 3 minutes later.
Yeah, I get that.
Thermal's good stuff, and I bought my first thermal camera almost 20 years ago, and I paid over $20,000 for that camera. But I considered it a very valuable asset at that time because a thermal camera, we did a lot of work in a lot of office buildings, and that was for everything from tech companies to big pharma. We're constantly working on meetings, before and after board meetings. And there's nothing worse than having to get on a ladder in a 2,000 square foot boardroom and pop up ceiling tiles the night before a meeting, a corporate meeting. So with thermal gave us the ability, if somebody's going to hide a camera in a piece of ceiling tile, that camera is going to run at a temperature of about 98 degrees to 105 degrees. If it's really warm, it can run up to 120. So we could detect the image of the camera, right? Like a square, like the size of a matchbook. If you remember what matchbooks are, if you saw a little white square up in the ceiling, then we've got a problem. So there's your camera. The other thing is that every camera, everything out there needs one of these. It's a power supply. You have to power the device. So if it's something that's been in there for a while, these power supplies get warm. At 68 degrees in the building, and this power supply is at like 95 degrees, again, you're going to find a hot spot or a white patch, that's going to show, hey, you've got something warm up there. You need to pull it apart and see it. Now, to answer your question, how deep will it go? Thermal is just for surface. It reads your surface temperatures, and the quality of the thermal is defined in resolution. And your better camera is high resolution, so it's very easy to see something standing out. You can also put crosshairs on that object, and the thermal has the technology to tell you, oh, that's 98.4 degrees. And I could go next to it, and it's like, well, that's 68 degrees. So you can differentiate real quickly with your temperatures, and it saves you hours and hours and hours of time of scouring through a building or a ceiling looking for a hot spot. Because again, any surveillance device, I don't care what it is, it has to have power. If it's getting AC power, it's going to be warm. Battery power is going to be a lot cooler. If it's a camera, the camera's going to put out heat unless somebody's taking a lot of time.
And the reason I'm asking about penetration is because you see in the TV shows and the movies, they'll zoom in on a house, and then you can see the thermal signatures inside the house. Now I know that mine, you can't go through glass with the thermals. It just reflects back. So, that's kind of useless. But I didn't know if there were maybe tools out there that's
some kind of X-ray technology.
Non-governmental type tech.
We've used X-ray in the past, right? We used to take telephones, and we used a portable machine. It was called a Golden, made by Golden Engineering. Anyhow, you have this portable machine from Golden Engineering, and you take your office phones, and we take one brand new out of the box, and we set it down, and we take one off a desk and compare it. We just set up a baseline, right, or a benchmark, and then we'd run each one through X-ray to make sure it wasn't physically manipulated. This is old school stuff. We don't use X-ray anymore. As far as going through walls, I've been told there's technology that can differentiate depending on the material that the ceiling or roof is comprised of. But here's the reality, and I'll say this, and Brad knows this, we're all coyote hunters, right? When you get out with your thermal out in the open, you can see a coyote coming across the cornfield. But once that coyote gets behind, say, a bunch of grass or corn or vegetation, you're not going to see that thing at all unless you see the white between the blades of grass, and you have to look really close. So generally speaking, as cool as thermal is, as much as some companies will brag about the quality of it, it sounds stupid. You have to be able to see the heat. If you can't see the heat, your thermal is useless.
Speaking of heat, I might add on the subject of that. If your phone is compromised, it's going to have extra software running on it. It's going to have nefarious software that's running on that device, and it's going to increase the load on the battery, and it's going to cause your phone to get hot. It's going to cause your phone to run slowly. So, switching out phones,
life is going to go down.
Battery life's going to go down. You're going to see those kind of things happen. So when that does happen, it's probably time to go get a new phone, change passwords, etc.
And that's a great thing you bring up is, a lot of people go, my battery's not lasting as long as it used to. Well, could be a reason for that.
Time to change passwords.
Today we're cleaning the SIG P365. You're going to want to follow the SIG guidelines for disassembly and reassembly. You're going to want to take the firearm apart, put it out piece by piece, and then you're going to grab your favorite Seal 1 CLP Plus product. Whether it's paste, liquid, or aerosol, they're all going to do the same thing. Today we're using the paste, and you can see that it comes out and it spreads very easily. Using the nylon brush, you're going to go in and you're going to cover the entire firearm, inside and out. We are safe on all metals, plastics, composites, rubber, wood, leather. So you're going to go piece by piece, putting it on there, wiping it on to clean it. Then you're going to go back and you're going to wipe it off. Remember, Seal 1 is a wipe on, wipe off process. Use Q-tips to get down in the little nooks and crannies that the microfiber cloth does not get to. Wipe it all off, and do not forget to do the magazine. Periodically, you're going to want to take the magazine apart to clean the insides. You're going to reassemble according to the manufacturer's guidelines. Get it together. You're going to perform a function test, make sure it's operating properly, and then you're done. Remember, Seal 1 and done.
Seal 1 is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for a 25% off discount.
Hey Marty, we're gonna need to start wrapping up. I've got some stuff going on, and Brad's gonna have to get out of here as well here in a little bit.
Yeah. I'm trying to get to Jim. So
yeah, let's talk about Jim.
Yes. Well, do we have a separate episode? Because we could probably just have a separate episode just on Jim.
I mean, we've been almost 2.5 hours now. So
yeah, I think we could probably.
I think that would be great if maybe we did like a follow-up episode. Let's talk about Jim. Let's talk about the other
projects.
Yeah,
huh? Other projects of Phoenix.
Yep.
Other projects of Phoenix and that other guy that's on the Art Bell.
Yeah,
I'm sure y'all have
Mr. Nolan. Let's do that. Let's do that in the future. I'm, just to give him a nod. Jim was very much a mentor to all of us, and Jim's not with us anymore. He passed. What was it? I think 2015, 2014.
Like
I'd have to go back and look. But Jim's not with us anymore. He died on his farm down in Rome, Georgia, and he left a real legacy with us, but there's very little information out there about him and about his career and about his heroics and what all he did for this country. And he certainly did a lot for myself and for the guys that work for him at Phoenix. And we'll always love him for it. But yeah, let's do an episode dedicated to him.
We will, and just to tease our audience, and this is from that article, Spies for Hire, just to kind of build it up, because you guys are going to want to tune back in for this episode. Yeah. He assassinated political leaders in Vietnam. He monitored Russian missile silos during the Reagan administration, and he set up communication systems in Eastern Europe during the Cold War. Yep. So just to tease a little bit of what's to come with those stories. So
yeah, he was a real
master of disguise. Brian, remember the different characters he said that he dressed up as, and you'd never even be able to recognize him.
Yeah, we're gonna do another episode.
We've got content for an episode on Jim, John Jr.
If you guys are up for it, you guys down? We're coming back for another episode.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's jump into listener questions. And I think we probably covered most of these. And today we're giving away Mission First holster. Hold on. Oh, that's one of y'all's. Something background noise coming from one of y'all. And we're giving away a Seal 1 and Done cleaning kit. So, questions. Nikolai Aplanap.
Old Nikolai back again.
Oh, he's like clockwork. Oh, I know where the noise is coming. It's coming from my phone from the post that I did here. Let me mute it. There we go. With the advancement of AI and quantum computers, does it boil down to being like the race for the bomb when we had in World War II to see who comes out on top? Is there really anything the average American can do other than going further than the Amish to retain any semblance of privacy? What steps can you take in order to at least mitigate incursion of spying into your home or office? And we talked about that a little bit. But yeah, the AI, I mean, it's definitely, you see that in the news constantly. about countries racing to get the latest and greatest AI, quantum computer. That's the big buzzword nowadays.
Yeah, I'd say it's less of a race, and it's quickly turning into a fight. Even here domestically, amongst all the different Silicon Valley companies that are working on these kind of technologies. Not to mention the U.S. government, and you've got weapons manufacturers now that are integrating AI into their systems. Companies like Anduril that are doing groundbreaking things with AI. I think in a lot of ways the answer is to make AI work for you. Learn about it, learn how it functions, learn how the technology is growing, learn what its capabilities are. The more informed you are on how it functions and how it works, the better you'll be able to defend yourself against it.
Yeah, you guys got anything?
You have to understand too. It comes down to individual protective measures. It's what you allow it to get on you. So you have to be cognizant of what you're putting out there, because you are your own human broadcaster, right? So you just have to watch out what you're broadcasting, and like what they said about your phones and what you buy and what electronics, and like this Apple Watch. I'm going to take a hammer to it after this episode.
You should do that to all Apple products.
Yeah. So
hey, the Apple Watch is great for scuba diving. I used it on a scuba dive just a little while ago, and it was phenomenal for use as a dive computer.
Yeah, but the Chinese know you're on a dive.
Yeah, they know where I'm at. They can
know where you're underwater.
Screw my whole mixture up.
I'd hope that I'm not that interesting anymore that they'd want to even know about me.
There was a time where they might have been that mad at us.
Yeah.
I think with AI, with AI, the easiest way to deal with it is don't deal with it. Google yourself, find out where all your resources are that are pointing back at you. Go to those sources and delete. Just delete. Unsubscribe yourself. Spend 10 minutes a day unsubscribing from things you're currently subscribed to, because if you don't exist, you don't exist. Last but not least, if you're really trying to do a hard scrub down from a countermeasures point, in addition to not being found by AI, take your devices, throw them in the fucking trash, every one of them, stomp them, burn them, destroy them, make them non-usable. Go out and buy new stuff. Use a different name and password, different stuff, different IP address, different Wi-Fi access point. That's the only way you can stay relatively private if that's what you're looking for. But again, once you've got a MAC address and an IP address, you just gave the whole world a starting point. So,
but do not unsubscribe from the Talking Lead podcast. Keep subscribing.
There you go.
Other questions we got, Nathan?
Next question, P-Man 301. I guess I'll also. Well, he posted this. Back in 2011, a foreign intelligence. No, wait. Where's his one about the? Here it is. What is your favorite spy technique, and why is it the honeypot?
Why is it the honeypot?
For me, it's elicitation. Man, I love it when it's almost you have to calm yourself when you are bracketing the conversation and you're kind of guiding it around to get them, and all of a sudden they release that information you want, and it's almost you're inside, you're just vibrating, and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting it. But you got to be calm, and then you just soak it in. And I think that's just, it's like 4D chess to me. Is
so yours is the old school one-on-one, person-to-person, kind of the human.
Yep. And I've used it through law enforcement. I've used it. It's a lifelong technique that Uncle Jim taught me that will carry on for the rest of my life.
Yeah. What about you, Mitch?
I'm with you on the honeypot. I mean, people love to talk, and that's something, Uncle Jim and JW have told us, if you allow them to talk, or, ask some questions, people by nature like to help each other out. So it doesn't matter if it's the trash collector, like, hey, when was the last time you were up to Jones' house, man? They're pretty nice people. And the trash collector will tell you about things if you ask them. So, using a honeypot and listening information, I think is one of the best tools on the planet.
What he's referring to, honeypot wise, is sex.
He's talking about sex, yeah.
He's talking about sex.
Damn, here we're being all professional and shit. He's running in the gutter on us.
Well, that's P-Man. That's what he does.
Man, I don't think there's ever been one documented honeypot success ever when we worked feet. I never heard anybody like.
Yeah, it was never anything that we ever did. I don't think none of us were pretty enough to do it except for Penny.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
And she had a temper, and she'd kick your ass before she could get the info out.
Sounds like she might play for the other team too. I don't
know.
It's
not like
No. Penny was strictly dickly.
Just like a lot of this honeypot stuff comes from the movies, where it's like the James Bond and all the chicks and the romantic affair. Now I know that there is a lot of
Mata Hari. You hear the stories about Mata Hari.
Yeah. There was just a honeypot that a successful honeypot conducted against the Haitian National Police. A gang member group infiltrated some national police guys at their police station using females, and then they used that as a Trojan horse. Got in there, shot a bunch of them up, and stole a bunch of national Haitian police weapons. So that just happened this week.
There was another one recently that happened, and it was like using one of those dating app kind of deals, I think.
Yeah.
And somehow, I can't remember what the specific thing was, but it was a guy who got honeypotted by another guy. I mean, it was a homosexual thing, but he used this dude to get the information that he needed for whatever. And I think he was a journalist.
That's like the congressman out in California that was, had a People's Republic of China girlfriend for the longest time. Shui or whatever her name was.
Journalists use that all the time.
To
get their stories they're breaking. But anyway, so I don't know how much you guys might know about this, but his next part of this question was, it's been said that what was too dirty for the CIA went to the USAID, given the need for presidential consent with regard to actions by the CIA. Has this now ended, given the shuttering of the USAID, or will it also be there, but rather get shuffled to various agencies in a never-ending shell game? You guys know anything about the...
I have no comment on USAID.
I didn't think you would. Do you?
I'll say this about USAID. USAID helped with the Iraqi elections when the United States was trying to assist the country in becoming a free democracy. And we had I think 5 or 6 cities in the United States. Yep. And I mean, there were Iraqis that came to Nashville was one of the voting cities. And I was in charge of all the video operations for the voting site in the city. And we had people coming from Detroit. We had people coming from Missouri, Texas. I mean, places Mexico, that you wouldn't believe. They were coming in personal vehicles, taxi cabs. So, I see that part of good in AID, but as far as anything else goes, no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
There's things I could say about USAID and connections to other things, but like Bryan said, it probably better shut the fuck up about that.
Same here.
I worked at the embassies and I saw a lot of shit.
Behurst, with the technology and AI growing exponentially, how would anyone not be seen or tracked anymore? Some kind of scrambler that puts another face on you on cameras? Because, they got like facial recognition thing now. That's something we haven't really talked about. What's your experience with the facial recognition?
Facial recognition is not all it's cracked up to be, I don't think, especially as the technology progresses. I think what we're going to see is things like AI using attributes like your gait or the length of your arms or the length of your legs, in using those pieces of data to build identity rather than facial recognition. I think there's a lot of ways to spoof facial recognition, to trick it, but it's much harder to change your gait. It's much harder to change the length of your fingertips, things like that. You see in child abuse, sexual child abuse cases, you see identifying marks on people being used to identify offenders in sex tapes and pornographic videos and pictures and things like that. They'll use the shape of somebody's fingernail as an identifying mark. There's all kinds of different dynamics that they can plug into these things now. I think that's really where we're going with
tattoos, all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
Are you guys seeing the private message chat thing?
I'm not.
I can pull it up. Is that something you need them to read? While you guys are looking at that, there's this TV show that I started watching. It's called The Patriot. It's an older show. Have you guys ever watched that? It's kind of a comedy drama.
I've not seen it,
but it's like espionage, spy thing, and the facial recognition of what he did to get past the facial recognition was, he like hit his head or something to make his head swell, had his teeth pulled his teeth and smiled real big, like that. So it would show his teeth and then deform his face.
Smoke signals and rub yourself down in mud like Schwarzenegger and Predator.
Well, he was going through an airport. He was going through an airport but it was kind of funny. But The Patriot, if you guys haven't seen that, it's a great series, like TV. It's like one of those streaming things. This will be the last question. I think I got most of I think we've talked about most of these. With everything being digital now, how important is it to have actual spies, or has that role moved on to the hacker cyber attacks to get whatever secrets are trying to be stolen?
I'd say that's kind of like trying to win a war with just entirely air power. You're going to have boots on the ground.
Yeah,
you can bomb the shit out of somebody, but you're going to have put the human element into it.
Yeah. Human will never go away.
The whole thing with trying to find these Iraqi targets, they completely went analog and ditched all the digital stuff, and you had to resort to, like you said, the boots on the ground, the human intel, the tracking, to be able to track these fuckers down. That's how they found Osama. Osama.
Whatever, same thing.
Money.
Yep.
Money, and people will talk for money, and that will never change. And you can't, if you don't have people behind you, you'll never gain any traction.
Yeah, you compromise people with 4 things: money, ideology, coercion, and ego. MICE, MICE. Money, ideology, coercion, and ego.
And sex.
Well, that can boil down to ego in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Coercion.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go with Nikolai and P-Man for our prizes this week. So you guys email me talkingled@gmail.com, and I'm not going to tell you. So just you email me and I'll tell you what you won. Either the Mission First Tactical Holster or the SEAL 1 kit. So there you go. Appreciate everyone's participation, and sorry for the late post. I'm sure we would have had a lot more participation if I'd have got the little post up earlier. But final thoughts, guys. Let's wrap it up, and I'm looking forward to continuing this in another episode coming up. So, final thoughts.
It was just really fun to actually get to sit down and reminisce with Mitch and Brad about this stuff. It's been years since we've really been able to sit down and talk about it and break that stuff down, and it was a real formative part of our young lives. And
man, look, here we are tonight, right? Because of that.
Here we are, man.
2025.
Cool. 2025. It's crazy.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah. Mitch, Brad, you guys got any final thoughts?
Go ahead, Brad.
I think we were able to entertain your viewers and everybody.
I was entertained. That's all I care about.
I was going to say, these aren't stories that, you're gonna hear anywhere else from anybody else. I mean, it's like if you want to change a conversation, talk to Warrior kind of thing. If you want to change a conversation, talk to a freaking spy. Same thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe next episode you guys can get John Nolan. You said he's still around. You think he'd be up to joining you guys for that next episode?
I think he would probably enjoy it immensely.
There'd be some great stories there. I would just make that a storytelling episode. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think he'd be doing most of the talking.
Yeah.
Well, I do have a mute button, so I could, I could mute him if I needed to. Mitch, how about you?
Yeah, I know it's good to get together with Bryan and Brad as well. I mean, we just, you run and gun so hard, and sometimes it's hard for everybody to catch up. And it's information with listeners to, give them a little sense of reality, because Hollywood does a great job of making shit look so easy. And it's not. I mean, collecting information takes time, skills, perseverance. There's a lot behind it. And, we've worked in it. We've lived in it. We've fed our families off of it. It's not easy. But the biggest thing I like to let listeners know, too, is like, be careful with what you do. You have to be careful, because some things are definitely not legal. And, you take things into your own hands without seeking any type of legal advice. Remember, today's all about selective prosecution. So be careful about who you piss off. And, don't be afraid of technology. At least try to understand how it works, and don't be afraid of it. Learn how it works. And, if you don't like it, don't use it. If you don't want your stuff out there, check on yourself, and then start deleting stuff, if you want to stay out of the picture. And next time we meet up, what I could do, and we've got a challenge coin we could put up for a prize for
oh, hell yeah,
for your guys. I think Brian's got some coins too. Brad, you got any coins?
Oh, I got a bunch.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So I got one of my challenge coins we can put up as a prize for your listeners. So
I've got a USAID coin.
Oh shit, that'll go for a high prize.
Could be a collector's
item.
Wait,
they paid $1 million for that. You're just going to give it away.
Does it still have blood on it?
Yeah.
All right, lead heads. That does it for this episode. We're going to wrap it up, but as we said, we're going to continue this conversation in another episode. Just so you know, upcoming, we're going to do a Kalash Bash Texas follow-up. We got some of the competitors that were at that event coming on the show, some of the attendees. So I'm sure they're going to have some good stories, fun talk about Kalash Bash Texas. So make sure you tune in for that. But make sure you go and support all our sponsors, the ads that we've run throughout this. Go use those discount codes. Take advantage of the codes. If you don't use them, we're going to lose them. But save you some money from our sponsors, and they greatly appreciate it. And I greatly appreciate you guys again, Bryan, Mitch, Brad. Thank you guys so much. This has been, like I said, thoroughly entertained. I was thoroughly entertained. I was enjoying every minute of it. I can't wait for the next episode.
Yeah, thank you, Marty.
So until then, lead heads, as always, keep your loved ones close.
Your guns closer.
Perfect.
She said she gave me our destiny.